righty. Good afternoon, everybody. Actually, good morning. I guess it depends on where you are in the country. Good morning, everybody. Uneducated Economist here. Got a new setup here kind of going for you. Want to try it out a little bit. I got my mic. Give me the thumbs up if everything is sounding good and everything's coming through all right. Got to make sure that everything is sounding good as we do this. Going to be talking about the gold-backed bonds that Judy Shelton has suggested the government not only sell but then hold for a purpose of causing a fiscal discipline within the government itself. And I find this to be a very difficult thing to internalize as a concept that will actually work, because you really have to trust the idea of the discipline coming. So there's a couple of things that are going down right now that really need to be addressed. And I really want to thank Deja, who had sent me a video to an Andy Scheckman video that was really good, talking about not only the stable coins, but then also talking about the gold-backed bonds. And when you think about some of the things that he was bringing up, it makes a lot of sense, especially when it comes to the idea of bringing in the fiscal discipline. Gold would definitely do that. The only problem that I have, or the only pushback that I have from this, is that you actually have to trust the government to be disciplined. And considering that the bond sale, or at least the suggestion of it, is going out like 20, 30, 50 years, who are you going to hold accountable by the time those things come due? So let's kind of break down some of the things that are going down right now. The idea of the stable coins and the buying of treasuries. Now, here's what Andy kind of had suggested, and I'm sorry, I forgot to leave a link down in the description. I will get a link to that video, and I will put it down in the description of this once it's uploaded. Now, to understand what it is that Andy was suggesting, is that the stable coins themselves can buy short-term treasury. So Tether buying into the short-term treasury market 90 days or less. This is very close to cash. And being close to cash then gives like the idea that these stable coins are as good as cash. Now, this is kind of where the idea behind that comes, but then on the backside of it, what Andy was suggesting is that the treasury holder, which would be the stablecoin custodian. So an example, if we had Tether holds the US Treasury, but then the interest payment from that US Treasury goes to Tether. And so now Tether is essentially in a profit position when it comes to holding these treasuries. Now, you and me, when we use the stablecoin, we're not going to really think any differently of it. We're just going to be using it as if it's a dollar. But when it comes to the custodian of that system, that stable coin itself, they're going to be holding a treasury, which is then going to be essentially paying them a profit. Now, what Andy suggested then is that they're going to be buying gold, which he suggested they are, to the tune of more than anybody else beside Poland, I think he suggested, which is incredible to think, right? Now they're holding all this gold. But something interesting that he had brought up inside of it is that if you have somebody who's buying in on massive quantities, so like when Tether's doing it, not necessarily a big deal, but when everybody is building these stable coins. So, for example, you're not going to just have Tether, you might have like all these corporations essentially building a stable coin within themselves, like, you know, Walmart coin or something of that nature. You're gonna have like all these different stable coins that are all under the same regulations of having to hold a certain quality of asset, being like those US treasuries in the short term. This drives a huge demand for US treasuries, right? So now all of a sudden you got this giant market for US treasuries, and these treasury prices start to move up and the yields start to go down. Now, I think back to what Andy just said about using the profits from the interest payment on the treasuries to then buy gold. But if you are driving the yields down, you got to have like operating costs, right? You got to make a little bit of money to pay people to do the job, right? To run this thing. But then you're also looking to have a profit to buy the gold with. But if you're driving the yields down, where does the profit come to buy the gold? Right. And this is where the question I start to ask, because it seems like he was suggesting that these stable coins are somehow going to repatriate the gold, right? So I'm thinking, okay, how does this? Oh, jeez, dog. Luna, go on, go on. Oh, you're such a good girl. No, go on. Okay, she's such a good girl. She just wants to be everywhere all the time, right? Good girl. So what I think about is just like, okay, so if boy, she broke my concentration here. Okay, so if you are to sell the U.S. Treasuries to the stable coins, what did the government do with the money? Right? They're paying treasuries with them. They're paying interest payments on treasuries. This is what they're essentially doing: is rolling old debt over into new debt, and taking on a little bit more in order to continue on with the spending programs that they have. But they're not like essentially paying the debts off, right? They just take on ever increasing amounts of new debt. So when these debts come due, the government just borrows more money, right? Sells more treasuries and then pays the old treasuries off, rolling them over into new ones. So when you sell these treasuries off, the government immediately, that's like spent money. It's already gone. And now if the idea is that the stable coins, right, are going to be buying treasuries, taking the profit from those treasury yields to buy gold, and then somehow the government's going to be buying that gold off of the stablecoin issuer. So now I have to question this. I'm thinking, okay, you already borrowed the money by selling the treasury to the stablecoin issuer, who then used the profit, which essentially was the sale of more treasuries, to pay that profit to the stablecoin issuer, who then has this little bit of profit that they buy gold with. And now the government's going to come in and buy that gold with what? Like more debt issuance? Like, where does the money come from to buy the gold from the stablecoin issuer? That is it magic money that just comes out of nowhere? No, it comes from more debt, right? And so now I'm thinking, okay, this is where this gold bond idea starts to come in. And I'm thinking, okay, so setting that one aside for just a minute, because that's an issue all on its own. Right? We're going to set that one aside for just a minute, and we're gonna think about what it is that this gold bond can do for the United States. Okay, because now the idea is that Judy Shelton has suggested this gold bond that will be paid in the future at some point with a very low yield, if any, like zero yield or even a 1% yield. All right. So like there's no interest payment on this at all. Right. But it's going to pay you in a fixed amount of gold or the cash equivalent of that. All right. So now I'm thinking again. You got 261 million ounces that they have in this reserves. And they're going to use this as collateral to sell these bonds and to say, okay, look, we got, here we go. I'm going to pretend, we're going to pretend my silver coin here is an ounce of gold, right? We got the ounce of gold, right? Sitting on a shelf. Here's the bond. It goes out into circulation. Now you got the bond guaranteed to pay this, fixed amount of gold or the cash equivalent at the time. Now the government sells that bond out there. What do they do with the cash? Right? There's only one thing they can do with the cash right now, and that is to pay the debt. Right? Because there is no other we're like literally debt to GDP is over 100%. Once that happens, any money that you get is going to service the debt. But Andy suggested that this money go to production. Okay, sounds great. Like, hey, I'm down for production. Let's do it. The only problem is that there's no real way of being competitive against other nations out there. So you can go ahead and throw it at the production, but it's going to be a malinvestment because you're not competitive. Right? Like that's the fact, you're just not going to be competitive in this situation. So now the suggestion of selling off this gold-backed bond at a very low yield was to discipline the government. And it was just like, hey, you're going to have to pay all the gold into the future or the cash equivalent of that. And if it's inflationary pressure that's going to drive the value of this bond up, you're going to have to be very disciplined, government, with your inflationary pressure tactics, right? You're going to have to be smart about it, right? Now, this is a 50-year bond they're talking about. And you got people in Congress, ain't going to be around in 50 years. Like there ain't nobody in the government who's going to be here in 50 years to say, hey, man, you made the wrong decision back then. They're going to all be gone. So it's just like, okay, good luck with that. It's just like, do you think they're going to be disciplined under the idea that, oh man, our constituents are going to come back and really get mad at us if we made the wrong decisions 50 years from now? Who's going to be there? Nobody. Right? Nobody who made this decision is going to be there anymore. They're all going to be gone, including myself. Right? 50 years from now, I'm going to be 50 years old this month or next month. So it's just like there's nobody who's going to be around for that. So like the idea that this is going to force some sort of discipline into. Here, let me trim this a little bit. Get that out of my eye. There we go. The idea that this is going to somehow force a discipline into the government, I don't think that's exactly accurate. Considering some of the issues that we now face within the government itself. So you're going to sell this bond knowing that you have debts to pay. And you're going to promise to pay this physical commodity into the future or the cash equivalent of it and expect the government is somehow going to be disciplined right now in order to succeed in that outcome, considering they're not going to be here when that day comes. Yeah, I don't think so. The money needs to be moved towards production, but yet the only way to really be competitive out there in their production lifestyle is to be right a lower lifestyle to compete against those out there who are producing the same things but are willing to do it at a much cheaper cost. So you can go ahead and like throw as much money at production as you want. Hey, like we're gonna ramp up production like you ain't ever seen before, and that's fine. You can do it, but it's gonna be a malinvestment because you're never gonna be competitive against the other nations out there who are doing essentially the same thing. You're gonna throw all that money at those companies, and then they're gonna be bankrupt, or you're gonna have to subsidize them, or have more government intervention, which is essentially gonna cost the government even more. So it's just like there's no way out of that. Yeah, you're not gonna like. There's no way out of just like throwing money at production and then expecting that to be start bringing in the goods and services or producing the goods and services that we really want to use here. Like it's not going to work like that because the nations outside of this country are going to do them so much cheaper and better. All right. So these are some of the concepts that I'm not sure if other people who have promoted this idea of selling a gold-backed bond have addressed, right? They're like, hey, we could just, just go and just buy the gold back from the stablecoin issuer, which isn't even really a concept. If you don't have the money to do it, you have to borrow the money to buy the gold. And if you have already sold the gold bond to get the money to pay the debt, then where are you going to get the money from? Right? It's going to be from borrowing it into the future, and it's just not going to really happen in that fashion. So, I mean, I like the idea. Don't get me wrong. I'm like, I love precious metals, man. I mean, I go out to the beach and I collect it. Here, let me show you. I got this little jar right here. Let me see. Where's the camera? See, that's my gold. I got that out of the Columbia River, out of the black sands. I mean, I'm into it, right? But to understand the situation we now face, I mean, he brought up Triffin's dilemma as one of the reasons why we have to, like, we've been exporting dollars and we have to continue to weaken the dollar, but somehow bring in some fiscal, like, discipline. And I'm like, well, these two are contradictory to each other. You can't really do that. All right. It's one or the other. So you're going to weaken the dollar at this, because if you strengthen the dollar, you're going to destroy your manufacturing output. You got to be able to sell your products to the nations out there, or else you're not going to be a good producer. I mean, you could try and, produce it all for yourself, but essentially there's going to be somebody else out there who's going to do it cheaper, and that's not going to really happen. So we have to like really understand the condition that we now face. So when you bring up Triffin's dilemma and then say, okay, well, we can create a secondary system that's going to avoid that. I don't think so. Like, you're not going to be able to avoid the idea that if you start denying the rest of the world out there dollars, that the dollar will strengthen and destroy your manufacturing within your own nation. And so you weaken the dollar in order to try and get your exports, like, to be able to have other nations acquire your dollars cheaper so that you can then export your stuff to them. Right? Now, if you're on a gold-backed currency, that's going to be a strong dollar, and I guarantee you're not going to be able to sustain your life in that same fashion because you're going to export all your gold. So there's only going to be, if you go into a gold backed treasury, like literally the only way it would work is with massive austerity pressure, right? I mean, massive austerity, like cutting back on all the social securities and Medicares and all this other stuff. These are the unfunded liabilities that are not paid for. So what happens as soon as you get the money? You have to pay the unfunded liabilities. No matter what you do, you're not going to be able to produce enough to pay those things. You're going to continuously go into debt. There's only a one-way street until collapse. And that's why, like, they're attempting to hold the system together. And these ideas, I think, are autistic fantasies. That's really all they are. And I mean, they're hopeful. And don't get me wrong, I would love to see the attempt, but ultimately, you're going to pay the consequence from it by being deprived of all your gold at the end of it, because the gold holder is going to be that bond holder, right? Is essentially going to take the gold. They're going to hoard it. Like the moment that the government starts to become like even remotely, inflationary, they're going to hoard and grab those bonds like you wouldn't believe, and they are going to like you will never see them, and the value of them, the price of them would just shoot right through the roof. And then the government is going to like, how are they going to pay that or give up the gold? Right. So when it comes time from those bonds come due in 50 years and the inflation has driven the price of the ounces up to $100,000 a piece, they're going to either give up the gold or, have to go into debt, print up the money to pay those things off. They're not going to be disciplined, that's for sure, because that's causing pain and suffering to the people, and nobody's going to vote for that. Nobody's going to continue to vote them in for that. So there's no discipline coming. Right? The only thing that's coming is more debt and more war and more separation between the rich and the poor. All right. Is everything still sounding good? How was the background noise with Luna and all that other stuff? Is that coming in all right? I can hear her kind of whining. When I start talking, she starts whining. I forgot about that because she just. Let me go through some of these comments. Good on the noise. Well, thank you, Static 4009. Okay. Ooh, nice. Silver and gold in the background. Hope it's real. Sounds good. Good. Good morning. Indoor UE. Amazing. Thank you, Tabitha. I think Chase Bank talked about making their own stable coin for international purposes or for internal purposes. Absolutely. And this is something like because cash is getting removed. Right. And so now they have the regulations for stable coins, and essentially anybody can, I mean, I don't know about anybody, but these banks should be able to be their own stable coin producer, creator, and just fall in line with those regulations. And any like monetary policy that is being conducted by the Federal Reserve will essentially transfer right through these stable coins. Yui is a professional creator. Yeah, well, we won't go that far yet, but yeah, thank you for the comment there, Tabitha. Whoops, notification missed. That's okay, Brody. You're here on time. Hit the like, please. Yeah, where is that like button? I don't even see how many likes we have. Oh, 58 people, 27 likes. Right on. All right. Good morning, everybody. Nice belt. Yeah, you like the belt? That's let me see if I can shine it on there. Yeah, I can't really get it. It's I got that from Zuber's conference. There we go. That's a little bit. I got that from Zuber's conference when he had me there. I think it was the first time. Wait, Luna's? Yes, you're a good girl. Buy energy stocks, robots, and data centers eat energy. Yeah. Brother, no fuzzy dice. Oh no, the fuzzy dice are here. Sorry, guys. Let me see. It's a little bit more for you. All right, fuzzy dice. Okay. What are your thoughts on today's events? To be honest with you, I haven't even really looked at the news. I've have a tendency to been backing off on a lot of the news because there's so much like hype and like misinformation and noise and stuff. So it gets pretty clouded at times. And so what I have a tendency to do when these events start to take place, where there's just like, oh, the straits are open, nope, they're going to bomb, nope, this is happening, nope, he's throwing out the idea of the housing thing or whatever, and it's just like, okay, just back up just a minute, and then just wait for the dust to settle. So when it comes to like brand new news that comes out like that, these headlines and stuff, when it starts pouring in like that, I'm like, I'm gonna back up for just a minute. So as far as like reading the news, I didn't even open it up today. I looked at lumber prices, saw that they were down at like 620. I think that's about the extent of it. Listen to the Andy Sheckman. Well, not the entire thing. I listened to probably about 2/3 of it. Yes, we hear you. Great, awesome. What do you think of the visual part of it? I think we could probably use a little bit more lighting in here. I tried turning it up.
Oh.
Maybe try changing the color of that.
The color?
Yeah, the color from that gold to like
that. Because that one's gold.
Yeah, try it back to the soft again. One more time. One more. Let's go with that one. That one looks most natural.
That's for the one you had on.
That was the one we had on. Okay.
Yep.
Green screen your car background over the wall. Oh, yeah, I guess I could, So does anybody have any comments, questions, or anything else related to the topic? We're going to try and keep these videos a little bit more related to the topic so that the algorithm has a little bit better understanding of what it is that we're doing here with the video. Didn't you discuss a Fed speech about lowering bank reserves? Yeah, so there's two speeches out there that talked about lowering the bank reserve requirements, and one of them being like a major warning, and that's the insurance policy. And if you reduce the reserve requirements, you're essentially lowering, the coverage that you are, even though it's a higher premium, right? But you're lowering the coverage at the same time. And this was one of the things that was it Barr? I think that was in Barr's speech, warning about that. Excuse me. But at literally, I think it was just a few days before that, Bowman did a speech talking about the lowering the reserve requirements, essentially providing more liquidity out there to the financial system, and that being able to have the liquidity backing to these banks. And so, if they don't have the reserves on hand, can they acquire the reserves in times of stress? And what she was trying to convey in her speech is that there's new systems, not necessarily even new systems, but appropriate systems that are in use now that would provide the liquidity during these times of stress. And mainly she was talking about the discount window, which used to be the main area of acquiring liquidity for these big banks. But then they abused the hell out of it way back in the day and caused all kinds of market issues. And so they decided to they didn't decide, it just became a stigma to go to that, right? So if you were a bank who was going to the discount window, they were like, ooh, what's going on with you, man? You're in trouble. What's up, right? And so when this issue was coming up with the banking systems and they were going to the discount window, everybody was like, there's a bad bank right there. They went to the discount window. Well, they've changed that, and they have essentially forced all the banks to use the discount window a couple of times a year. So nobody knows exactly if it's just a standard operation to, as they now have the banking system set up, that you are essentially required to use this discount window at times in order to, make sure that it kind of removes that stigma, because people saying, well, if you're using the discount window, you're a bad bank. But now it's just everybody has to use it. Well, now the discount window is a good form of liquidity operations to get to the banking system during these times of stress, because before it would have caused a panic situation, where now it's just a normal operation. And I think that's something it wasn't addressed in Barr's warning speech, but still, I think it's still, considering that we haven't really met any kind of significant stress within the banking system, I think that would be questionable on whether or not it's actually going to work. All right. All-nighter, how did we get paid $3 a pound for our salmon in the 80s, and now these guys are happy with $1 a pound with much higher expenses. WTF, where's the fish? And I think that has a lot to do with the operations of farming now. So like you're competing against like massive, operations out there that are providing somewhat of a salmon product. Where you think about it, like all canned salmon, like might be able to find some from the Atlantic salmon or whatever, but you're going to find like the salmon that was used in the bulk operations out there. Because you have to think salmon was used in all kinds of stuff, right? It wasn't just like a nice, beautiful, like, silver coho fillet or something like that that's coming up at, a $400 fish or something like that. These were salmon that was being essentially packed and processed not too far off from like what tuna would be considered today. Well, now the fish that like All Nighter is catching, now these are somewhat priced, although they go to the cannery, they get canned and all the other, I don't know about his, specifically, but generally that's kind of how they work. And some of the higher fish, the higher price fish that move on to being filleted and sent off to the markets and stuff like that. These particular catches, right, are now competing against all the rest of the farm stuff out there. And I would only assume that, when you're competing on this kind of level, you're not necessarily just going to be able to provide to the luxurious experience all your fish. Right? So now you gotta go into that lesser market in order to sell the bulk of the fish. And I mean, at least that's kind of what I kind of guess in my mind when I think about it. It's just like when you were back in the day, the salmon itself was all had to be harvested, every bit of it from the wild. And now, like, that's not the case. Salmon upgraded. Yeah, we tried to upgrade just a little bit. Salmon was a war food. Yeah, right. Bank limitations are natural in my mind. Bank regs are a farce as well to produce confidence in the system. I could be wrong. No, I think you're not too far off from that, Minor. What do you think about Tether buying stake in Altua's royalty? Again, we kind of like even in the idea of where it is that these stable coins are right now, like this is a condition in which that I don't think can consistently exist going into the future. See, like the idea behind it is like right now they're getting paid a hefty yield on their holdings of US Treasury. But the more the banks like right now, like acquiring it seems like a pretty big deal, but it would be a big deal if it just happened on this massive proportion that all these stablecoin issuers are doing that. And the problem that I'm going to see with this is that more stablecoin issuers getting into the game are going to be forced essentially to buy US Treasury, which is going to drive the yields down, the prices up, the yields down, and they're not going to get paid any kind of real profit to buy anything with. Right? Like right now, it's a nice, unique situation, be like in the front of the game, but give it time, and eventually this won't be the case anymore. So for now, yeah, it seems kind of like a big deal. And, if they take full advantage of it, they could probably acquire quite a bit and put that on their balance sheet and then be a real stable, like, kind of coin kind of thing. Because you think about it, the more you diversify into things, even if you were to diversify into commodities, into stocks, into bonds, into all this stuff, like you do, like in everything, kind of holdings, and then be very cautious on how you're positioned inside of those things. Like, obviously you want to be more weighted in one section than the other at times. You can create a very stable environment for yourself, right? Inside of those things. And so even if you have the highest risk things, take Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies or other things like that, along with some of the most stable, commodities out there that don't fluctuate very much, and you combine all these together, you can essentially come up with what is, a broad, holdings of just about everything out there and still be somewhat stable within it, even though the volatility within some of those things are extreme. Big holders, what is that? Bitcoin holders MSTZ is on the tear again. Oh, deplorable. Getting the cannery has also had over 100 years to find fishermen's price discovery to pay as little as possible. The love of fishing is why we are accept so little. Yeah, and I also have to think about some of the automations. Like, um, they had like the first time the mechanical fish processor came in. Like, you think about it, it was just like you didn't have to pay somebody to fillet the fish. You could, like, you had this machine that you could drop the fish into, and it would process it all out and do whatever it needed, in order to make it happen. And that was like, hugely for, the increase of automation and to force a lesser price on the fishermen. It's just like, well, we don't need to pay somebody to cut the fish up, so we don't need it. I was explaining this to my friend. A crash could and likely means huge inflation and not every asset adjusted. No. And that's the thing about inflation, is that when you blame it on money printer, then you end up assuming that all things are going to devalue the same and equally. And that's just not the case. It's just not going to work like that. Really, inflation, and the best way to look at it is through supply demand imbalances, because that's really what ends up going on. When you have an increase in money, what are you doing? People say, well, that's going to increase the prices. No, not really. It's going to increase the consumption. And there's a difference in that, because you're not going to increase the consumption in everything. You're only going to increase the consumption in that and what it is that the people want who have first access to that money. So if you have first access to the money, are you literally going to run down there and buy a bunch of toilet paper, or are you going to run down and buy a ribeye? Right? Most likely, you're not going to really need the toilet paper as much as you really want the ribeye. So with the increase in new money, you're going to find people buying ribeyes over toilet paper, and then you're going to have a shortage of ribeye, which causes the price of ribeyes to go up. But yet toilet paper just sits there without any kind of change to the price, even though there was influx of new money. It's because it changes the consuming habits. Once you have changed the consuming habits, then you have the price movements, right? So that's really important to internalize in such fashion. So I'm gonna turn that up a little bit there. So and looking down on me there. Wow, Simon a studio, yeah. Not really. It's just the corner of my house here, but it works as a studio. Got the dice, yeah. Let's see here. What do you think about Tether? Oh, we already read that one. And
Screw up. See what you missed.
Oh, I haven't. This is the very last one.
Oh.
They're popping up on their own. What about a stable coin pegged to $1 with no administration keys and fully decentralized? What different? Well, I'm not sure what difference it would make. Right. I mean, do you have a suggestion on the difference that would make? Outside of like people. This is one of the reasons why I'm not even really a fan of the whole gold back bond, is because people don't take into consideration the Gresham's law that kicks into gear and hoards that gold away the moment that it becomes available. And if you have a bad currency like dollars out there, the people who recognize it are going to be like, oh yeah, just give me all those dollars and I'm going to buy all those bonds, and you're never going to see that gold again. And that's the unfortunate consequence of then backing the bond with the gold, like a physical gold coin, is that, if you don't come up with the dollars, which, who knows what the inflationary, they're like, well, this will force discipline upon the government. No, it won't. Those people who are going to be disciplined or forced to discipline are not going to be here to pay the piper. So no, it won't cause discipline. That's absolutely wrong. It'll cause the price of those bonds to go through the roof. And then unless you go into debt to pay the bond, you're going to have to give up the gold and say goodbye to the gold. All right. Our bunkhouse was stacked with TP. I made sure of that. The other boat in the bunkhouse took about 75% of what I provided. We got some words planned. Oh boy. All right. That could also earn yield for securing the network that would stop all the Fed from negative interest rates. The what would they earn the yield from? The US Treasury debt? Because once they start buying into that Treasury debt, they're going to start driving the prices up and the yields down. There won't be much of a yield to have, right? Who ends up keeping the gold? The bond holder, right? That's the thing. Like, even if you didn't, okay, let's say, for example, they didn't even give you the gold, they kept it, right? Then, I mean, what would end up happening to the government? Like, let's say, for example, the government lost control of the fiscal discipline, and gold ended up in 50 years being worth $100,000. Okay. Now, if you don't give up the gold, how do you come up with 100 grand? Right? So now the bondholder's sitting there going, give me my money or give me my bullets, right? Which is, give me my gold or give me my money. And so, and if you're just standing there with the bond saying, okay, pay up. As soon as you get the 100 grand, you go out and you buy gold. Right? So at that point, the government's screwed out of their gold, or they're going to screw deeper and way deeper into debt. And then once you give up the gold, now it's gone. You're done. Nobody's going to care about you anymore. Right? Nobody's going to trust your debt issuance. Nobody's going to trust your authority. Nobody's going to have confidence in your dollar. You ain't going to trust any of that stuff. So don't get me wrong. If we go into selling these gold bonds and the government gets incredibly disciplined, starts cutting back on all those entitlement programs, and just like really start twisting the screws to the people, and just like, they'd be feeling it with no help from the government whatsoever. It's like, hey, man, we can't do it, or else we're going to end up going broke and losing a lot of gold. So unfortunately for you, you're going to have to dissipate the consequences of these austerity measures. Right? And if that was the case, then it would work. And that's what's scary about it. And if that is the case, then yeah, maybe you could bring production back, because all these people would be broke as hell living on the ground, because they got all these austerity measures that essentially cut their food, their medical, their all the other stuff, all those unfunded liabilities. Like, no, you can't pay them. Because if you pay them, we're going to go deeper into debt, because you have to take out more debt to pay those debts. And if you sold the gold bond in order to pay those debts, then where are you going to come up with the money to buy the gold, or to pay the gold holder, the bond holder of the gold debt? You already done, like, if you don't put it in, like, cut back on all, like, you didn't spend it on that debt. No, sorry, man, you guys, you don't get this. You're not going to get any of it. In fact, you're going to have to suffer the consequences of not getting your check, not getting your money, not getting all that other stuff, because with this money, this is earmarked for production. Unfortunately, it won't work unless you're broke as hell, living on the ground, because you got to compete against those other people over there who are sleeping on the ground, producing the things that we want to produce here in the United States for ourselves. And in order to make this productive, this gold-backed money, this gold-backed bond money that's earmarked for production, in order to make that work, you're going to have to be broke as hell. So the austerity measures have to kick in first, deprive everybody of a high standard of living, and then deploy the production. Okay, let's do it. Sounds great. Who's going to vote for it? Nobody. Literally nobody. I disagree with the modern technology. They could make good idols that don't break. Huh. I mean, I got some really nice real estate for sale on the moon, real cheap too, $30 an acre. Buy as much as you want. Powell still has a seat on the FOMC, as he has a Powell's definitely a voting member on the FOMC, definitely. The government could easily have public utilities that benefit the people. Easily have public utilities that benefit the people. Okay. Why don't they? All right. I mean, if they could easily do it, why don't they? And if you say it's because they want to cause pain and misery and suffering, okay. Yeah. Then. All right. I'm sorry, Lunas. I'm having a good time out here talking on this, and I know you're not in part of it. It's a bummer because you're a dog and you don't know monetary policy. My electric is run by city, and yes, they are crooks. Instead, they privatize everything so the rich can get richer. Do you not understand the process to get rich? I think he had a typo. I think he just said government and help together. They do it because they love the money. I mean, does anybody want to take in like an underlying economic force to explain it? I mean, instead of causing a blame, because you can like, there's plenty of symptoms to blame it on, and it will totally work. Like, you could totally like come up with a reasonable, logical, very detailed explanation on how it is that they are doing this on purpose. But then, if you can come up with an underlying economic force that overrides all that, wouldn't that be the better thing to discuss? I'm just curious on that. Yeah. I mean, maybe not. Maybe the better thing to discuss is, the politics of it. Is buying a silver and gold royalty company being close to the means of production these days, or is it a no longer relevant? No, I think that that would be anything that's invested into the production of it, I think would be close to it. Like if you don't outright own the company yourself, but even like any kind of process along the lines, like even if you think about it, if you found a trucking company that was working that mine or whatever and happened to be the only trucking company around and they're new and young and nobody ever heard of them or whatever, and you can invest into that company because this mine's about ready to kick off, and they're the only trucking company around that's going to then support all the supplies going to it. It may not be in the mining operation itself, but you might realize that this is going to be a company that's going to be valued in this particular area. It's just like, it's kind of the same thing, right? You may not be participating directly in the mining operation investment, but because that mining investment is going to kick ass, that trucking company that's in that location might do well as, because of the supplies that needs to be brought in because of it, something of that nature kind of thing. Like that's the kind of thinking. Yeah. Idiocracy. I like money. Oh, I've never seen, people keep telling me to watch these movies. I've never seen that one. What time is it? How long have we been going at this? I don't even see. Where's the time on this thing? Is it on there? Oh, it's up there. 43 minutes. Okay. Venezuela needs investment to produce more petroleum. We don't have public utilities because the oil CEOs located in Houston is taking all our resources for themselves, and then they pay the government like 40%. I finally called another live chat. Time is irrelevant. Tabitha, you're so right about that. Do you think they're lying about the inflation numbers? Do you think they're much worse than what they stated? Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, they're lying about the numbers. Are they much worse than what they stated? I don't know. I guess it depends on what metric that you're using in order to look at it. Like, it really, it hurts the people at the end of the line the most. So you're going to see the inflation a hell of a lot more at the end of the line than if you're at the top, right? And then, or not even at the top, because at the top, you're going to see the inflation too inside of your assets and it's going to benefit you. But really, when you think about like, is the inflation a lie or is it the truth? And I mean, it's just like the way they judge it and view the inflation is never this. It's like, it's not even apples to apples anymore in any stretch of the imagination. And so it's like, I don't even like trust any numbers that they give at all. Like, none. I mean, outside of the use of it to say, hey, if this is where they think it's at and this is where the Fed funds rate is at, well, then wouldn't that put them at neutral or very close to neutral? Now, where the inflation number is exactly, couldn't tell you. Where the neutral interest rate is exactly, again, I couldn't tell you, those things. I have no idea where they're at, and I wouldn't even know if they were telling the truth about it if they told us, right? So what I can kind of see out there is what it is that seems to be taking place as far as an economy that seems to be somewhat less restricted for a great number of people, while at the same time, a whole lot of other people talk about how restricted it is. And so then I have to think, man, what is it that's really happening within this economy? Is there a lowering of the real interest rate? Yeah, I think that's really taken place because you can see the evidence of it within the statements of the people who are asset holders. And at the same time, the belief systems of the people at the end of the line. So yeah, elevated inflation expectations lowered the real interest rates and it's benefiting the asset holders. And I've said it over and over again. Like there is no difference to that. I've been saying the same thing for like 4 years straight, you know? Todd says the problem is we have to save in dollars, and if they're stealing our purchasing power through inflation, we lose. Well, that's the problem right there, Todd. Why are you saving in dollars? So you've given it an expectation you shouldn't have. It doesn't have a savings quality to it. There's a savings. There's where savings is found, right? Here, you want a little another example of savings here, right? Where are they? Right there, copper coins, right? These are all copper pennies. Each one of these is worth 4 cents. Right? Now, those are savings if you want to save in money, save in coins, in actual currency. Because what you're talking about is a currency trying to act as money. Well, this is money that can act as currency. And there's a difference between it because this can be currency and this can be money. But the dollar will never, ever be money. It will only be currency. So if you save in currency, it'll fail. But if you save in money, you might have a chance. And once you have given it that distinguish the difference between the two, then you don't give dollars the consideration of holding value because they're there to be a current from one thing to the other, right? That's what it's doing. It's like transferring your goods and services to other goods and services. And the moment that you stop and you hold on to it, if it's not in something like this, then you can expect it to fail or to lose value. So when they say they are doing this, no, your expectations of what the dollar is failing. It's not them failing. They provide a currency for you to trade with. The idea behind saving in it, that wasn't right. Nah. Now, if you put it into something that does have an interest to it, like a U.S. Treasury, then you can kind of consider it a saving, right? Because it has an interest to it, pays you a little bit, hopefully keeps the purchasing power behind it. You can put it into something else that saves, like silver, put it into stocks and bonds. But to save the money, that's not money. That's currency. And it's not something that it's not going to hold value. It's not meant to hold value. It's meant to do one thing, trade goods and services for other goods and services. And it does a freaking awesome job of it. But to give it any kind of consideration, it's probably going to perform very poorly for you. I have copper too. Yeah, I save all those copper coins. If you have to pay your taxes in dollars and you have to hold dollars, most people don't have silver and gold. They hold dollars and they lose. Right. So if like your tax money is like that's their money essentially. Like, I mean, it sucks that you have to pay. I don't like paying taxes. I pay a lot in taxes and I don't like it. Right. I don't like the fact that I have to pay taxes, but it's not even my money to say, like, well, you have to pay it in dollars that loses value or whatever. It's their dollars that's losing value. It's not even mine. Right. The moment that I get it, I should just pay it to them and then I don't have anything to do with it and then take my money, right? Which is not even money, my currency, and then go and, put it towards something that is going to be saving. So, like, even the idea behind that, the moment that you make the money, just pay the taxes with it, and then you don't have to stress about having to, hold on to it or pay with devalued dollars or something of that nature. It's just like that's not even your money, like at that point. It sucks because it is your money. And you have to think about this. This is what's really funny about taxes. Taxes are the most, like, the lamest thing in the entire world. If they tax 100% of our income and 100% of corporate profits, they would still fail to be able to provide enough in revenue to pay off the unfunded liabilities of Social Security and Medicare. There's literally no way out, period. None. Right? And so when we think about like paying taxes, what are we actually doing? They're taking our time. That's what they're doing. So if anything, to be harvested of your past is literally taking your time from you. That's one thing you will never, ever, ever, ever get back, and there's nothing you can do to buy more of it. Right? There's nothing. You can try and take care of your health. You can, pay a fancy doctor to hopefully fix you. But ultimately, you're allotted so much time on this earth and you'll never get it back. And every time you pay taxes, they're taking your time from you. That's what's really happening. Right? Cash is a short-term transaction. Yeah. Taxes are a liquidity siphon to combat inflation. To think we have to save in dollars is exact mindset there that traps people. Think outside the dollar network. Absolutely. Like, I hold very little cash. And that's one of my issues right now. I should have more cash. But I like holding assets, and because I know what it means to be an asset holder. If you're holding on to cash, there's really only one reason you should be holding on to any kind of like significant amount of cash, and that's for emergency purposes or to deploy into those buying opportunities. Because cash on hand, it speaks like the moment that it comes up, somebody says, "Well, how much is it? $10,000." Boom! I got seven right here, right now for you. Take it or leave it. Right? Cash in hand. So having the available cash without having to liquidate something is very smart in that sense. But that's not a savings, right? That's a positioning, and that's a positioning of strategic fashions. And so in that mindset, that's not the same as like, saving it for, a rainy day or something like that. Like, that's no, you got a particular moment for this that's going to come up that you're ready for. And that's maybe considered a rainy day fund or something for people, but that for me, that's not the same thing. It's like, being very like cautious. It may happen tomorrow or not. And then the emergency fund things, because you never know when, that unexpected bill comes up, and, having to go into debt to deal with that. Now you have to pay interest on that. You're like, not even no point in even investing if you have a debt, and just pay off the debt. That's the best investment you can do. So that's really like what I tell people is just like to become an investor. Like, I was listening to a guy one time who was talking about investing. And he says, man, if you got debt, he says, you're already got an investment. He says, you just pay off your debt, because there's no better investment out there than to pay off that debt to get a better return on your capital, because you're never going to be able to use the capital itself to acquire an interest beyond that of what it is that you're paying on your debt. So if you have debt, there's no point in investing. It's just like, it just doesn't make any sense at all. So just pay off the debt, be very committed, very dedicated, as much as you can, every dime you can, and you get that into that debt. And the moment that you pay off the debt, don't change the mindset. Keep it. Keep that tight, paying every dollar to the debt, and then transfer that over to the assets. And then boom, now you're going into assets in that same fashion. That's where the investor mindset comes in. Whether you're in debt or you're buying an asset, it doesn't matter. The investor mindset is the same. And that's important, right? See, this is where people are like, oh man, I'm too much in debt to invest. And it's like, that doesn't make any sense. That literally does not make any sense at all. You're too in debt to invest. You got the greatest investment in the world. Well, not great investment. You got an investment. You got the debt to pay off. Man, don't tell me you don't have an investment. You're an investor right there if you got debt. Just keep the mindset when you get out of the debt and then transfer that over to assets, and it's the same thing. You like literally your feeling will be different because you don't feel the stress of the debt anymore, but your condition of life doesn't change except the feelings and the positionings that you have, knowing that you got the security of not being in debt, collecting those assets, cutting back on your expenses when you find them. This is the position that people really need to move towards. So even being in debt and having no assets whatsoever, you can instantaneously be an investor just by having that mindset of focusing in on paying off that debt. Oh, wow. Thank you, Statistic 4009. Did you give 10 memberships? Oh, man. Thank you so much for doing that. That is really cool of you. Look at all these people who have received it. Todd received a membership. Jack received a membership. Serenity received a membership. Kimberlyn, Stewart, the Red Prometheus, Omnius Rooster, Bitcoin Phoenix, Raul, and Derek administration administer. I can't read it all. I'm sorry, man. That is awesome. Well, thank you so much, Statistic, and congratulations, all you guys, for those memberships. That is really cool of you to give those memberships out there. Be sure and take full advantage of it. I'm sure you got a month with those memberships. Go through all those membership videos. Watch all those videos in which that we broke down the speeches. There's some really good ones, even the recent ones that we did talking about the liquidity requirements and whether or not, there's a big warning sign here taking place from Barr, or whether or not everything's hunky-dory and cool within the system. Those are great speeches and very telling of our current situation within it. Simon, I've gifted a lot of memberships. You normally don't see it when you're in your car streaming on your phone. Thank you, Statistic 4009, man. I really appreciate all those memberships you've done, man. Thank you. I would love to see people take full advantage of those memberships and then understand, or at least have like a moment within it that says, man, this stuff is so important that I need to start gifting these memberships out to other people. Right. And to me, like this paying it forward kind of thing. And I know, for a lot of people, it would be like, oh, dude, you're just trying to make money off the memberships. I had them for $1, right? I got $1 memberships, and really, I think like once you have a better understanding and once you have like joined in on the group who is very serious about like the credible threat theory and the things that are happening within the monetary policy, you start focusing in on this kind of idea. It's really difficult to see it any other way. Like all the rest of the economists start becoming like, they talk hypothetical, they talk superficial, they don't talk about the down into the deep end of it, like into the thick of it. And that's really where I think like this channel is unique in that fashion, especially considering the working class point of view that we're taking it from. Like most of these economists out there, they're flying at 30,000 feet. They got millions of dollars, huge, operations taking place. And we're just average people here, right? We're not special like that. Yeah. Although Deja sent me a message saying that I was special, and I have to appreciate Deja. She is so nice. I don't see her up in here though. And I really have to thank her because she was kind of the inspiration for this video by sending me that link. Eric and Missy, welcome from Nantucket is where I call home. Make sure your debt make sure of your debt. Productive debt is good. Unproductive debt is detrimental. Yeah, and that's the other thing. Like, what kind of debt is it? Bad debt. That's really when I'm talking about debt. I'm talking about bad debt. Right? Like all your consumer debt, your credit card debt, student loan debts, things that are holding you back and that'll prevent you from actually doing well. Will C is awesome. Wow, dude. Yeah, absolutely. I think the Uneducated Economist crew is just like really the best out there. I understand that there's a lot of good speakers, there's a lot of good economists, there's a lot of people who dive deep into the weeds of it, into the thicks of it too. But really, I just don't know of anybody who has a crew or a comment section, a conversation like we have that really incorporates how it is that you can internalize the information, giving it meaning, and then making it useful in your own personal way. Most of the economists I see out there are blamers. They like to point out or be accusers, right? Accusations and blame and you know evidence of misconduct and stuff like that. And I understand like a lot of that is very entertaining and it's like, it's shocking. And so like, oh, tell me more, and I get that part of it because, believe me, I used to very much fall for that kind of mindset in just a lot of the things that I was looking at. I even use it sometimes here on this channel in ways to, give it that shock, kind of here, listen to this. But really, at the end of it, I'm really trying to calm the situation for the people so that they aren't in a panic and they're not feeling like frustrated and high anxiety and wondering what it is that they need to do. I'm like, here, man, listen, let's calm down for a second. Let's get a better understanding of what's taking place with the monetary policy. Let's get the Cantillon effect in play. Let's, understand Gresham's law and Triffin's dilemma and the bullwhip effect. And once we kind of see these things and then find evidence of it taking place out there, pretty soon you're listening to the Economist describing the situation. And it's just like, why don't they talk about the Cantillon effect? They obviously know it's taking place. They don't. They can recognize the symptoms, but they don't know what it is that they're describing. And this is where, Plato's, shadows on the wall descriptions start to come into play. And so once we kind of recognize what it is that they're describing, we then just look at the evidence of it. Yeah, they're describing the moving of manufacturing out of here, and we know the reasons why, and all their techniques and all their, accusations and all the other stuff that's coming up. That's less important, right? Because it's really superficial. It's hypothetical and not real. Once we look at it and we say, hey man, what's going down is the Cantillon effect. You're going to try because you're a politician and you're going to throw a bunch of money at something that isn't going to work. And we get that. Like we get that part of it. And so as people who don't understand that look at it as like, oh no, that politician's doing a real good job. You just wait and see. We're going to have manufacturing coming back and all this other stuff. And it's just like, no, because you're not incorporated in the Cantillon effect. There's no way. Right. But if you could explain the Cantillon effect part of it and then argue against the Cantillon effect and say, this is what we're going to do to fix it. Okay. Well, now we got something because I can't bring up the Cantillon effect and say, okay, well, you got a good argument against it. Well, what am I supposed to say now, right? I got to figure out your argument and then, right, play this tennis match back and forth. And since nobody could really argue against the Cantillon effect because he was recognizing what happens when you increase the money supply to the point where you start driving the inequality and you continuously increase that money supply, you are going to force out your domestic manufacturing. There's zero doubt, zero, because he recognized it hundreds of years before he wrote it down hundreds of years ago. And it's going to happen hundreds of years from now because that's how it works. And as much as we try to come up with, artistic fantasies and ideas of how it is that we can, manipulate it differently, those underlying forces will play out. Definitely. Like you can mask them, you can hide them, you can pretend they're not there and ignore them. And for a while, it may actually reveal itself as, a feasible possibility. But then one day, the underlying economic forces will play out and you will see it. And it'll be like, damn, why is it that we have more war, more debt, and more inequality between the rich and the poor? It's just, It's because you got new money constantly pouring in and it moves into luxury. That's it. And then after that, we can start talking about the symptoms of that. But it's new money and the move into luxury. That's it. I'm convinced that all the money comes from the government, whether you're a cop, a teacher, or have a government contract to make bombs. These are the only paying job security. I mean, I kind of understand what you're coming from there, but because when the money, essentially when the government spends the money, that's how the money is essentially getting injected into the economy. But that's not exactly right. Right, because we have to understand that money is created from an IOU, and whether or not it's the United States government creating it through a treasury or the Federal Reserve creating a liability or some other foreign nation out there that has nothing to do with the United States whatsoever, not our banks, not our corporations, not our people, nothing. And they wrote an IOU that was doing dollars, and that's being used like money as well. And that's performing transactions. So it's not just the government. I mean, the government does what exactly kind of what you're saying right there, but it's not by itself. And the understanding that all the money in the world is really IOUs based on dollars. Now, whether or not that was created by us or somebody else, it's still performing a dollar transaction. General statement. I agree with the money coming from the government. The only people benefiting are the business owners on the other side of the contract. I mean, I see where you guys are coming from, but I think that's also not considering what it is that is happening out there in the globe, because there's money being created outside of this government. Dollar creation, and it's a real thing. And it's not just the government we can blame for this, although we can. I mean, we can blame the government for it all we want, but we also have to recognize where else dollars are being created, and it's not just there. Right? All currency U.S. dollars are government sanctioned and liability of the Fed. Money is not the government and discharges the debt that is the dollar. The thumbnail is whatever. How's the content? Is somebody making fun of the thumbnail? Oh, shit, thumbnail. Yeah, it kind of was. All right. Simon, tax code. Enforcing American labor and material mandates means our means of labor only comes from American dollars, not from global markets as a whole. No, I mean, I get that part of it. But I think the idea of it is just whether or not the dollar's values, whether or not they're created here within the tax financial system of the United States or created outside, there's still a push of value, right, onto the existing legal recognizable system, as opposed to the shadow currency system outside of it. I guess what it is people have, and I've done this same thing, have a tendency to look at the government and say, okay, you're responsible for all this, right? And if you didn't do these certain things, none of this would have happened. Now, considering that, yeah, if you create a situation in which that other people are then taking advantage of, and you then blame the original situation on it, then yeah, okay, it's government's fault. But the government isn't necessarily in charge of the behavior of the people, what they do with it. Although they would like to be, they're not. And so this is really where I think trying to blame the government to say, hey, you're responsible for all this stuff. I don't think they're necessarily responsible for the people's interpretations or the meaning that the individual person has given it. I understand that they have tried to manipulate that, the propaganda and all that other stuff. And it very much takes place out there. And to consider it as the responsibility of the government to make sure that the people's mindset is correct, I think that's probably the last thing in the entire world I would want to give them that responsibility for. So right now, what we have is very much a mind game, manipulation, propagandized, whatever you want to call it. And the people have put that responsibility onto the government to then create the belief system that is going to be appropriate. And that's where I'm thinking, holy crap, nobody's going to have the right mindset because it's literally propagandized information. So it's like the government's in control of what? Your thoughts? Is that it? I mean, what else could they possibly be in control of? You have actions. You don't have to participate in this. But they've convinced us. Right? Like, I mean, I go and I pay taxes, I earn a check, I do all the other stuff. We don't have to do any of this stuff. But we choose to because we have a mindset that says this is what you have to do. And then that mindset is manipulated because it's all voluntary. 100% of it is. I'll throw something at you. Cool. The only reason why we have so much red tape is because we're rich enough to hire people for controls that cost more than the effort. Yeah, I would imagine the more money you have, the more complications and regulations and everything else that comes with it. Yeah, that makes sense. Money is an IOU. Yeah, perfect, dude. You can ignore the fact that there is a small group of people siphoning the wealth off the U.S. I think you want to, but I will speak up about it. Okay, deplorable. How do they do that? Now, do you understand the Cantillon effect? Cool. Now we all do. We all understand how it's siphoning it off. It concentrates the wealth into the hands of a few. So do you want to call that a manipulation, or do you want to understand the economic force that is playing out that then has symptoms of manipulation involved with it? It's like, it's up to you, man. I mean, you can give it the conspiratorial mindset. It's the same thing. But if you want to give it a meaning that is like, man, they're doing this to me, as opposed to me understanding the situation that's at hand, then go for it, man. Because I don't think they're doing it to me. It's more me understanding the situation at hand so that I can position myself accordingly. If I think they're doing it to me, there's nothing I can do. Oh, well, I'm just going to go sit over here in the corner and die. Yeah, I ain't got no choice, man. They're doing it to me. But if it's my understanding of the situation, now they're not doing it to me. It's just more my interpretation of it and how I handle it. I understand the Cantillon effect, and I know that the concentration of wealth is going to continue into the hands of a few. Right? The consumers are moving to the top. Top 10% of household incomes do 50% of the consumption. In the 90s, it was 35. Do you think that's going to reverse? Okay. No, of course not. It's not going to reverse. It's not going to reverse at all. It's because there's going to be ever increasing amounts of new money that pours into the system. It's going to concentrate into the hands of a few. We can blame them and say, oh man, don't do that. But then that's what happens because it's the Cantillon effect. And then we will witness the symptoms of it by what? Them consuming more and us being poor and us having labor wages that just don't keep up and all the other stuff that seems to be forced upon us like we're slaves. And then we'll give it that meaning, and then that's what it'll be. Slavery. But I'm not going to do it. So the only difference between me and somebody else who's being a slave is literally the mindset behind it that says, you go be a slave. I'm not a slave to it. I understand the system. I understand what's happening. I don't like it. Not my job to like it or not. My job is to understand it so that I can position myself accordingly. Some people don't like rainy weather. Some people don't like the sun. Right? What difference does that make? You can't control those two things, but you might have to be in it. Well, if you're in it, how are you going to do? Complain about it? This is somebody else's fault making me be in this rain? Right? Like, what did you do to then put yourself in that position? Think about that. Nobody's forcing you to do anything. It's all voluntary. Yeah, and I really appreciate it. The conversations that we have here today, guys, are just it's awesome. Like I know sometimes I sound a little like, I don't know. Who said it the other day? Said I sounded condescending, and I didn't really think I did, but I don't know. Maybe I sometimes I do. I'm just like I don't really think it's from my own personal view as much as it is like, hey, I've acquired this personal view of underlying economic forces that I can't seem to find any real evidence that says these things aren't playing out. Right. And so that's what I end up falling back towards. It's just like I can blame or find evidence of things that are happening out there that seem to be quite unique to a situation. But then when you find, like, when you get to the root of it, you're thinking, well, is this really like, a manipulation tactic that's happening here that's very like, draconian in nature or something of that nature, right? Then you could probably find evidence of it. But if you're looking at it, it's just like, well, this is how they would end up behaving during these times of an economy that has expanded to the levels that it has. What would you see happening? These type of things, you would see evidence of these peoples and their misbehaviors, and they're like, the whole idea, like, think about how much money is being dumped into this damn reflected pond and how much attention is being brought to it. Just that in itself. Yeah. Like, I think I wasn't even going to bring it up, but I look at the power pendulum that was created from this thing, right? Millions of dollars dumped into a pure luxurious experience. This thing has nothing to do with, like, literally it's to look at. That's it, right? And it's kind of ugly, and they don't like how ugly it is, and they're dumping millions of dollars into it so that it doesn't look ugly anymore because it represents our nation and all the other stuff. And I totally get it. It's just like, yeah, that's what luxurious experiences do. Right now, you have to maintain this luxurious experience. It gets super expensive. It's hard to do. And then, people look at it and they say, man, if you can't do that, are you really who you say you are? Yeah, like, you had this image that you was super shiny and perfect, and now you can't even keep this reflective pond all nice and pretty, man. What kind of luxurious experience is this really? Yeah, see where I'm getting? Like, the money is just wasted into these things. Doesn't go towards production. That will never produce anything other than a headache and attention. um, no problem, Brody. I'm glad you and All Nighter are here to keep everyone civil enough. Why are you guys getting mad? Are you guys getting people getting upset? The government should not. Oh, I'm not going to read deplorable. Deplorable just tries to own the chat. Um, bingo. Yeah. Speaking of bingo, Sarah called bingo the other night. That was pretty fun. She did a great job of it too, from what I understand. All right. Are we done here, guys? Do we want to keep going? All right. Simon does just fine. He's just was slacking today. Oh, are you guys talking about this thumbnail thing? Good Lord. I swear, like, so like, I find it so kind of ironic that your videos are based more on the thumbnail and title than they are on the contents of it. And that's really sad to see it happening. Like, even the fact that it's even brought up in the comment section here and that it's part of the discussion is just, it's just more evidence of it, that goes to show that the superficial is more attention than the the reality or the actuality of it. Because outside of, like, Simon's stream number 3802 or whatever it is, what difference does it make what that thumbnail or the title is? Unless I'm just trying to get attention, which it will do if I do it right. other than that, there's no difference to the video. The videos will always, be the content of what it is that I'm trying to share in what I value. It's not going to be any different, but yet somehow if I put the appropriate thumbnail and the appropriate title there, it's a good video as opposed to a bad video. That seems strange, doesn't it? Doesn't that seem odd? Now I'm gonna have to look at the thumbnail, listening and doing ranch work. Yeah, it's just a simple thumbnail. I used like Gemini to create it or something. I don't even know. You know what's funny is now the YouTube, like messing around with the YouTube here on the desktop is way different from, because I've been just using pretty much the app on my phone the entire time. So having the desktop, I mean, wow, there's a lot of different features that can be done here. And one of those is like to be able to like take this stream and make it members only like halfway through, which I thought was really cool within it. But the other thing is that it has an AI thumbnail generator right in it. So you can like, it'll scan your video and essentially, come up with a depiction of what it is that, is most appropriate for the video. Like the one yesterday, it said a brick wall, right? And it took an image of me and it was all like really super sad and like, like even like almost like an old, like gave it like an old wrinkly kind of almost, I don't know about wrinkly, but like definitely it was like a weird image of me. And I'm thinking, wow, that is cool as hell. Like it happens right within the app, within the desktop, program itself. So, it's like, okay, well, if you guys want to make it that easy, so many people want to, build thumbnails for me, and they like call me up, hey man, let me build a thumbnail for you. And I'm like, dude, I don't make that much money off of my videos to pay you to make thumbnails. It's just like, maybe if Lumber would take off and I would get 50,000 views a video again, I might consider it. But at this point, there's just like, I just don't make enough money off of YouTube to do it. Yeah, please. Thank you. Boy, sitting here at the desk is gonna like, I'm gonna be here for like 8 hours, Mama, because there's no time limit and the battery doesn't die. All right. Yes, desktop is amazing. It really is a better app, So thank you, Mama. Do we want to break anything down? We want to talk about anything in particular? Do we want to go over any ideas or topics or explanations again? We're just kind of sitting here having a conversation. If you really enjoy, like we had a members, we had the webinar yesterday and technical difficulties. I kind of screwed it up. 2 people joined in on the webinar, but I realized there was 2 links that got created. And so a bunch of people had joined in on the other one and had their own conversation as I was having a different conversation taking place on a different link. I don't know what happened. Anyway, technical difficulties. It was, kind of messed up. But the conversation I had with Susan and Tom, oh boy, I hope I got that right, was just amazing. It was just the 2 of us. We talked for like an hour and it was so fun. And we had we told jokes. We talked about, economics. We talked about theories. It was just a great conversation, just the 3 of us. And even Susan said, oh man, I was really bummed out because I didn't think without other people there, it would just be a conversation between you and I, but it was really great. The 3 of us had this great conversation. We didn't really know each other. And so we kind of got to know each other through the webinar a little bit. And it was awesome. So I'm looking forward to these things. Every one of them we've done now has just been absolutely incredible. We're going to do another one on Saturday, starts at 9:00, and we're going to do them on Tuesdays at 6:30 West Coast time. That's a little late for the East Coast people, but I work on Tuesdays and, that's when I can do it. So I look forward to doing more of those. It was awesome. Simon, if you want a fun topic, is IPOs now that VC culture is so prevalent. VC prevalence means the stock asset class is now limited to explosive growth behind the venture capitalist and private equity. Yeah, actually, something that I have taught, excuse me, I've talked about a little bit on the channel and had mentioned in the past is how like a lot of these new innovative companies who essentially had like these venture capitalists who want to invest into them in the private equities and so like they have like a particular industry or a particular technology that they want to invest in, like, hey man, we really like this, and then there's like five companies who they're looking at that say, hey man, we can invest in these five companies. They're going to be involved in the products or the industry that we're looking at, but we don't know which one of these guys are going to make it. Like, one of them is going to be really successful, two of them are going to be okay, three of them are going to, the other two are going to fail, right? So like three of them are going to be like in the winning category, but you don't know which three they are. So they invest into all of them, which means two of them are going to be malinvestments. They're zombie corporations. They would never exist no matter what, because there's not enough room for them to exist. But they're going to get the investment anyway because they don't know which one of them is actually going to be the successful operation. And so this ends up happening, and you're going to find a lot more of that taking place, especially when you have the abundance of money out there that can then do that with. I bet if you started an organic farm and started producing healthy food, no sooner you become successful, they would find a reason why you can't sell your product. Yeah, like I did. Well, here's the thing. I figured out okay. You got to understand the wording. You know who Joel Salatin is? He's awesome, man. You got to, if you haven't listened to Joe Salatin, the farmer guy, you got to. This dude is incredible. And I remember listening to quite a bit of them when I was raising the birds and raising the chickens, because I wanted to basically start a little hobby farm raising birds, selling meat birds, like literally raising the Cornish cross rocks and butchering and selling them. Now, here's the cool thing about it is that you can go through the whole licensing and all the other stuff so that you can sell those birds to stores or restaurants or whatever. But in Oregon, I mean, I don't know about the laws this exact minute, but at the time I was doing it, you could raise 1,500 birds a year. 1,500 birds a year. Maybe 1,000 to 15. Okay, somewhere anyway. It was like 1,000 birds plus a year, which is way more than I ever would have done. And as long as you sell those birds as a whole bird, so you can butcher it, right? But you can't cut it up. You got to sell it as a whole bird. And you sell it off the property itself. There's no licensing. There's no inspections. There's nothing, right? Like, you can do that legally. Now, my question came, and I started talking to the guy at the Department of Agriculture for Oregon. I was just like, I was emailing him back and forth, and I'm like, hey man, I want to butcher birds for other people. How do I legally do that? He says, no, you can't do that for other people. You have to get licensing, inspections, all the facilities, all that other stuff. And I'm like, well, yeah, but we're like hobby. These are like people who have like, two or three birds that they want butchered, and I'm butchering all my birds already. How do I do this for them legally? He says, you can't do that. You cannot butcher other people's birds like that. There's no legal way of going about it. And I was just like, bro, like, come on, man, you got to give me some, like, a helpful hint here. Like, what is it that I got to do in order to make this right? And he says, listen, you cannot butcher a bird for anybody else. You can teach them a lesson. And I went, oh, I can teach lessons on butchering birds? He says, there's no laws on teaching lessons on how to butcher birds. And I went, oh, got it. Thank you. So I taught how to butcher a bird for $5 a lesson, as many lessons in a row as you wanted to take. And so as long as the people were there, I was teaching lessons. And that's what I did. And nobody ever questioned me on it. I never got, nobody said anything about it. And so that's how I got around that one, because legally I couldn't charge $5 to butcher a bird, but I could charge $5 to teach a lesson on how to butcher a bird. Cool. All right. Okay. I mean, maybe the create a law, you must spray to prevent E. coli or illegal or slaughter an animal or any a million reasons, not to mention where there's a will, there's a way. This sounds like how Rolex is actually considered to be a non-taxable charity. All right. That's a lot of work for chicken. It's $10 a piece for people to buy it. No, it's $10 a piece for them to farm a commercial bird for you, which I guarantee you, like, think about this for just a minute. I would buy a chick, like a little baby chick, for about $2.50. Okay. Now you got to feed, water, raise, butcher, process, deliver, cook, and hand over in a retail space a $5 chicken at Costco. Now, I know how much I put in to raising one myself. And even if you were to get that chick for free, right, there's a hell of a lot more than $5 that goes into that. So you got a $5 chicken that you can buy cooked, and or whatever they are, $6, $7 now. I mean, I see them in different places. You got this bird that there's no way that you could have fed it, processed it, cooked it, and sold it for a profit unless you have really compromised on the quality. Now, I don't know if you ever had a pasture-raised chicken. And now I'm not talking like the heritage breed, like a Rhode Island Red or one of the Barred Rocks or something like that. Those birds, when you raise them up, they're tough as a boot. And they're not necessarily like the meat birds that you would buy from the store. Those things are a hybrid bird. They're not genetically modified like a lot of people want to call it. Okay, and then whatever, and they probably got their reasons in their videos that they've watched that shows that. These are hybrid birds that were developed way back in like the 60s, 50s, even earlier than that. In order, actually, they were for the war effort, but they got really good at it later on. Ultimately, it's a hybrid from a Cornish bird, a Cornish chicken, and a barred and a rock chicken. And the breeders were able to combine these two to make a fast-growing, big-bodied bird that would never exist in reality, in like nature. It's a terminal breed. Like there's no way that these things would be a successful bird on their own. So they have to be essentially bred to do this. And as many people would call it a genetically modified, it's not. It's extreme hybriding. Now, when you go through that process of getting the chick, raising the chick on property, on grass, on ground, where they get to eat the bugs and they get to pick at the flowers and they get to eat the grass and they get to scratch in the dirt and they get to do all those other things, you butcher, process, and eat that bird, and you have something that is dramatically different. I mean, like, it's really noticeable in pork. Like the pork, pasture raised pork is like a whole other thing. It's not even the same. It's like not even the same thing anymore. Chicken is pretty extreme in the sense of it. Like you can really notice the difference, but pork is like none other. It's like off the charts, you know? So when you compare like a store-bought chicken at $10 to a pasture-raised bird that somebody had, actually raised on their property, not only when you eat that pasture-raised bird, you're going to realize that you are more satisfied with the meal itself. Like the meat is dense. Yeah, not like so dense, like what the hell? But you can notice it has a more firmness to it. It's more fulfilling. It's not what I call like puffy, fake watered down. Because that's what I kind of like imagine now chicken when I get it from the store. That's what I see because of how many birds I had raised myself off the pasture. Right. And so once you kind of, understand the difference between these two, like you're not even comparing the same things anymore. Those who recognized the difference between it easily paid us $25 a bird, anywhere from $20 to $25 a bird. And that was years ago that we did that. And I had no problems. I mean, 25 birds, all gone. 50 birds, all gone. Every single time. No problem. And yeah, and even the people who bought them regularly off of us, they would buy, 2 or 3 chickens at a time from us. They said they can't eat like the regular store-bought chicken anymore, just simply because when they go and get it, it's just mushy and it's flavorless and it's just not doing it for them anymore. Sunsetsky says, I just got a grass-fed, cow processed, freezer full, no comparison to the grocery store. Absolutely not. I love grass-fed beef. Pasture-raised beef and finished on grain. Oh man. Like there's a couple of farmers around here. If you can get them to give you one of their steaks that do it right. Oh, they do it so good. They just know how to do it, Not like these feedlots where they just cram them through, raise them up, butcher them, and get the meat out. These guys actually, like, they know how to make the meat taste good. All right, we have chicken for the eggs, no comparison. I get my meats from Walmart like a true American. Yep, Justin, I hear you, man. So you raise for the family and save money for your family. Drive about 30 minutes for raw milk, pick up every other Saturday. Now that's cool. I have a goat out here that is, we're going to essentially have, we're going to raise up with the calf. Once the calf gets sold off, then, we'll be able to milk the goat for a while anyway. And I'm actually looking forward to that, to see what that would be like. I've had goat milk when I was a kid. My grandmother used to have it, and I remember I didn't like it, and so she would mix it up with the like chocolate milk, and then I would drink it. But the last time I had some, I kid you not, it did not taste goaty at all. Like there's a definitely a particular flavor to goat milk. And like, I like goat cheese. It's in that goat cheese. You can definitely taste the flavor of it. But man, this lady had some goat milk that was so clean, so nice. It didn't have any of that goaty flavor to it at all. It was awesome. Simon, get away from the grain finish, glyphosates in the grain. It's in everything. What am I going to do? Right. It was in the bread that I ate the other day. It's in it's in everything. Like you're going to protect yourself because you ate a steak that didn't, that wasn't finished on grain. I don't think so. Yeah. If you knew exactly where every bit of food that you had ever ate came from, okay, maybe. All right. But to avoid the glyphosates it's almost an impossibility at this point. It's probably like, I just don't think it's possible. Chicken is easy to raise for your family. If I could have any chickens in my apartment, I would. Raw goat milk here every weekend with cinnamon, cocoa, and honey. Grass-fed goats make a huge difference. Yeah. Baby goats are the cutest thing ever. Oh gosh, goats are just funny and stubborn. Like I've never owned goats in the past, but my grandmother had goats, and she was always really good with her goats. They listened to her. She trained them well. Man, Freddie's goats are
stubborn.
They're stubborn, right? Like, you put them, like, I got this huge lead for them, and so they can be out in the yard. And as soon as you click them onto the lead, the very first thing they do is go right to the end of the lead and then get mad that they can't go any further. And they're reaching as far as they can for the little bit of grass. And I'm like, you guys have a 50-foot radius of grass. Like, what are you worried about? Oh, loonies.
Yeah, and when they both got out and you had to try and put one back, he was stubborn.
Chickens outside my window have been laying at 5 a.m. lately. No need for a rooster when you've got laying hens. Oh yeah, they get noisy and cluck, get to clucking, and they are pretty noisy.
Come on,
Thank you, sir.
This is the last time, because this is the 5th time she's done that.
All that effort, and then you butcher the bird, and the meat is green. Ugh.
Oh, tell them about the black chickens.
Black chickens?
Yeah.
Yeah, silkies. Silkies have all black meat and skin. It's really trippy when you butcher them out. They don't look appealing at all. The flavor isn't any different from like any other heritage breed bird. So they're actually really flavorful and pretty decent as far as that goes. But the skin and the meat is just a trip. You know, it's just like, oh God, what happened? You know. Yeah. Yeah, look them up. Silky chickens, you know, butchered silky chickens.
Yeah, it's like the meat and aren't the eggs black?
No, I don't think so. I think the eggs are white.
Yeah. Did we get any eggs from them? Did you want the eggs? No.
Cow raw milk, eggs, home garden. Why is a grocery store needed?
Because, yeah, we got goats, and after fair, because one's going off to the butcher, but we have one that might get back for a breeder. So we're also going to get some baby goats.
All right. Are we done here, guys? All done for the day? We got...
Really? I thought you were going to go for like 3 hours since there's no time limit.
Well, we're an hour and 41 minutes into it, and I think talking goats and chickens and pasture raised is going to be... Well, I guess there's 57 people who are enjoying it. Get it up to, I don't know, 57 likes. We'll stick around for a little bit longer. Oh, Looney, she just can't handle it.
It's her 6th time being out, and she's done nothing.
She can't handle me sitting here talking. She's like, what are you talking about? What are you talking? Who are you talking to? Talk to me.
We went from, what, the government to chickens?
Yeah.
Talking.
Definitely love the homegrown meats. Very lean. Yeah, I do too. I mean, everything that's homegrown has always been so much better, in my opinion. Even like, you know, the carrots because I love carrots. I eat carrots every day basically every day for breakfast at work. I sit there and munch on these carrots. And we had found some that were left over from last year's garden when Sarah was tilling it up. And surprisingly, they weren't like, you know, they get kind of woody, you know, they get like fibrous and tough. These were really actually in pretty decent shape and were super good. They were way flavorful. And I'm like, man, that's the huge difference inside of like store-bought to the homegrown. And those ones, like I said, were like been in the ground for a long time. You know? Just
like we had potatoes that they survived winter. When we got them up, we had like, what, 35 potatoes?
Yeah, there was quite a few potatoes. And those had wintered over, and there were some that were missed, and the plants started growing again. So Sarah was just like, okay, well, we'll see if we can get some more potatoes out of them. So attention. What are we up to? 54 likes. Getting close. What does this do down here? Share screen. Oh, that mutes mic. Okay, I got it. How's the background noise? Do you guys hear a lot of background noise? Like, obviously the dog is whining, but do you hear people moving around in the kitchen and stuff like that? Or is that...
Can you guys hear this?
He loves testing it. Hear Freddie walking across this floor. So can we all say that the grocery store food has basically no nutrition? Wish RFK would hurry up with the health food thing. Yeah, but I don't know if it's gonna, like, the way the food production is taking place now, I don't know if there's any real possibility of producing good quality food with high nutrition value in an abundance that is affordable. Like, if the average everyday person took it upon themselves to start growing their own food and then have that available to themselves, then the likelihood of being able to produce an amount of food that would then be available at an affordable price for the rest of the people out there, I think might happen. But if you don't have a bunch of people producing their own food, then most likely you're going to have to be in that commercial production in order to provide an abundance of food to the people. You know. Sounds good from here. Well, Pilgrims grew those plus cabbage. I think vegetables get starchier as they ripen and fruits get sweeter as they ripen. Interesting to have a carrot that gets sweeter. It was good.
Yeah.
And you know, the neighbor told me his wife won't eat anything that he grows in the garden.
Why?
Doesn't trust him?
He grows it and he puts it away and he's got all kinds, and then she won't touch any of it.
Huh.
That's why I eat everything. That dude brings over all kinds of stuff, and it's the best. I got a farmer who lives next to me. He was more of a flower farmer. He grew flowers, but he grows a ton of vegetables over there too, because it's just his hobby. And berries, a lot of berries and stuff.
We went over there. We got like a giant bowl of strawberries and then some raspberries. We made some strawberry chips. I found out.
Justin says he's probably into self-fertilizing, Mama.
I found out raspberries don't like what's it? Raspberries don't dehydrate. We tried it and they just got really sour and tart. Dog. What's your problem?
I love how Freddie is comfortable being on camera. Apricots are awesome dehydrated. Yeah, he brought over some dehydrated pears. And like, to be perfectly honest, I dehydrated a bunch of apples and stuff, and I was not that pleased with them. They were okay, and I kind of munched on them, but those pears were good, and I ate a bunch of them. They were really good.
Yeah, we got.
What do you have there? Oh, these are the strawberry chips that you made?
Yeah.
Oh, that's okay. If I chew on one of those, I'll start spitting all over the desk. Tomatoes. We have a couple of tomato plants. Yeah, once the garden gets up and running, you have to be quiet. Once the garden gets up and running, we'll show you. I'll take you out there and give you a tour of it. But right now, they're all just little tiny plants, so there's nothing.
Got some more green tomatoes so far.
Yeah, got some green tomatoes. Learned a little bit about growing peppers out here. Is that pepper plants do really well, but they don't grow a lot of pepper. Like they don't fruit out a lot of peppers off of them. And so I noticed, because we have plants at our store that we sell, that the peppers that were left over that didn't get sold in front of the store, and they have these huge windows and it just cooks the plants. And like everybody always complains every year that our plants are getting cooked, and what else are we going to do, right? They're in front of these windows. But those pepper plants produced a ton of peppers on them. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute. And I was just like, I bet you they like to be like kind of like comparatively to the rest of the garden, less watered, right? More of a dehydrated state. And so I told Sarah, just water around them. And sure enough, man, now they're just like, these plants just got a ton of peppers on them. So I'm really looking forward to those jalapenos.
Past 57.
Yeah, it sure did. And I also found the baking apples, like Anna and Golden Dorsets, are really good for some reason dehydrated. No, I'll put it up here. All right, get down. All right, you guys are gonna have to make me quit, huh? You're just not gonna, or not you. You're cool, but you are not.
You're mean. You're really mean.
All right, cherry tomatoes are excellent. Yeah, that's really all that we grow around here, at least in our part of our county. Is simply because like the bigger tomatoes, they don't fruit in time. They ripen in time, and actually to get any kind of real harvest off of them, because the plants blight and it's bad. So if you can cover them with plastic, then you can actually do pretty well with them. Greenhouse, super awesome, but exposed, out there in the open, if you don't have like the cherry tomatoes that ripen early, then most likely your plants are going to grow this beautiful plant, have all these flowers and a lot of green tomatoes on them, that then has a plant that turns black and starts to die before the tomatoes actually get to ripen. So, that's one thing that we found is just like, man, it's just so much easier to grow cherry tomatoes here because you can get the harvest before the blight kicks in without having to deal with like covering them. We're just hanging out. No questions, no comments, no talking economic policy. Could you take her for a walk or something, bud? She's just like, she's not going to have it here. I'm going to have to quit this if, thank you. I heard you got to beat your tomato plants. I heard of that. Like, actually, like, to try and strengthen them, like you kind of, I don't know exactly the technique behind it, but like whipping them or something. Like I heard somebody doing this with like on a fruit tree, kind of doing the same thing. And apparently this makes the branches stronger. I've never really done this technique, but I mean, I guess it kind of makes sense, like I know for like, at least for the people who are growing cannabis, they would put fans on the plants to blow them around to strengthen them. Otherwise they would grow up and topple over because they didn't have any like wind to kind of push them around to strengthen up the stems. And so, I mean, I've heard of that kind of thing happening. So, I mean, I guess it would make sense. Are you following IP2B to IP28? No, I don't think I am. Thank you, Freddie. I appreciate you, man. I'm going to start teaching people how to spray the weeds in their yard. Do you like Roundup, or is there a particular chemical that you like to use as opposed to one of the organic treatments like vinegar? Like we sell a lot of vinegar at work for people to use as a weed killer. Which is kind of funny because then like the landscape guys and the one of the guys who does a lot of like asphalt will come in and get a lot of Cazeron, which is like big time herbicide. And like all the professionals buy chemicals, like all the homeowners buy vinegar. Bill proposal to outlaw hunting and fishing and farming in Oregon. Yeah, I don't think it'll pass. I mean, they might get the signatures on it, but I doubt it'll pass because I don't know, maybe. I mean, Portland's a pretty weird place, and they kind of control it all, because they have all the voting populace there. Yeah. Pollution, maybe. My drunk friend said he got mad and beat them with a golf club, and biggest tomato harvest ever. Pollination. Oh, sorry, not pollution. Pollination, maybe. Play music for the plants. There you go, Tabitha. That makes more sense. Outlaw fishing. No way. I love fishing. Fishing's fun. Yeah, they want to like basically make it illegal to hurt an animal in any way, shape, or form here in Oregon, and I just yeah. Initiative petition, also known as the Peace Act, is a proposed Oregon ballot measure. It certifies it will ask voters to eliminate the legal exemption that currently protects hunting, fishing, trapping, and standard livestock farming from the state animal abuse status, effectively criminalizing these activities. Yeah, I'm aware of it. Right. I mean, we talked about it here, and I guess Portland could possibly do that. But then again, we voted to make drugs, decriminalized here, and they just went ahead and criminalized them again in certain ways, in order to deal with the fact that everybody was doing drugs, and everybody's going to continue to do drugs here. This is what I find so hilarious is that, they think, I don't know, like people seem to think that laws can stop people from doing this stuff, and it's not, right? And so the only difference that really made is that they put it out there on the streets for people to deal with, right? And now they want them to go hide again. And I'm like, this is not fixing it, guys. Like, the whole point of legalizing this stuff is so that you can actually deal with it in an appropriate fashion. And then they don't, right? It's just like, it's now out in everybody's face. And they're like, no, go cram it back under the bridge, behind the walls, and get it out of our face again and make it somebody else's problem to deal with when it gets worse. It's like, it's just so frustrating to watch it, and I mean, I'm just sitting there, yeah. So I just don't think that one's will pass. Too many people would understand that this would like eliminate all the like production of like commercial chicken and all the other stuff. We have commercial farms just like everybody else around. It would eliminate all that stuff, and it would cause the food prices to just be like, astronomical. It's just not going to be feasible to happen. I understand that there's a lot of people who like the idea behind it, but the reality of the situation is that it just won't work. When you create a prohibition of such fashions, you will create so many illegal outlaws. It will be unreal. It will be unruly. It will be such to the point that you would be spending so much money trying to prosecute and deal with the outlaws of this that you wouldn't have any room inside of your legal system to deal with anything else. And so it's just like, let's see it happen, because how are you going to stop anybody? It's just like, you can't, because everybody is going to go out there and collectively act in a civil disobedience in such a fashion that there would be no way to even regulate it or control it or stop it. Should be illegal. It is illegal to do drugs in public. It was never illegal to do drugs in public. All right. You can't smoke weed in public. You can't even smoke cigarettes. Like in my county, you can't even smoke cigarettes in a park. Right. You can't smoke. So it's not even a matter of drugs. You just can't even smoke in the, Simon, in your opinion, do you think the housing market would benefit from regulation in the same style fishing is regulated with fishing licenses? The only thing that I find with, at least with the idea of fishing licenses, is that you at least give the people some sort of guidance on what it is that would be useful to the conditions of the environment to continue on with that recreation and use. Now, if nobody had any guidance to it and you could just take as many fish as you want, people would. I know they would. I mean, I've seen too much illegal harvest to believe that they wouldn't. And so in my opinion, like, and I know All Nighter will definitely push back against this one, but that's okay. In my opinion, like without that guidance, then most people would create a condition inside of the environment that it would just no longer be, sustainable or useful. At least with some sort of idea that, if you can pull this amount and we know how much is coming out and then keep track of that amount, then, there can be a sustainable amount for a lot of people to enjoy, while also providing commercial application to it. And without those regulations, then who knows what could happen. I think in some ways it could be self-regulating if done right, but that's a lot of trust that's involved with people who are saying, "Oh yeah, I promise I won't take too much," and I just know that wouldn't be the case. I mean, like I said, I've seen way too much, to think that it wouldn't happen. And so in that way, I think the fishing regulations and stuff like that are somewhat applicable just to at least for the guidance. Like if people could just follow that guidance, then they wouldn't need a license. Like what would be the point of it other than to create the government infrastructure to maintain that guidance and everything else that they do. I mean, there's a lot that goes into the fish and wildlife, especially with the stocking of lakes and stuff like that to keep the recreation going. It's pretty impressive, really, on how much they try to push the fishing recreation here in Oregon. Like they encourage it big time. They're like, go fishing. Here's free fishing days. Here's how to do it. Here's all the techniques. Like they really want people to enjoy it. And I am assuming, it's because they would get more revenue for it if they were out there enjoying it. But it's not like they don't want people to fish. They want people to do it. And I'm thinking with the regulations of housing, that ends up being a lot different in that sense because, like, regulations, especially when it comes to housing and fishing too, in that sense, is really unique to the particular area. And so, if you think, like, okay, so if we fix the regulation for housing in a way that is more conducive to the people out there, well, how do you know what that would be? Like a regulation for fishing is conditioned for those particular areas. Like you can harvest more trout in one area than another. But that's unique to those regulations. You can't say, hey, man, if we just adjust the fishing regulations, it's going to be across the board for everybody. It wouldn't make sense. And that's the same for the housing market too. Like saying, hey, if we just adjust the regulations, then it would be awesome for everybody. It would be like, well, every one of these markets is different with different regulations for different reasons behind it. So each one of those is a unique understanding. It's not the same for everybody. So to just like broadly say, well, it's the regulations that are doing it, it would be like, well, let's take each case individually and think about that because each regulation in each area is going to be different and unique. Yeah, the uniqueness could be different for state and region. Right? Without some regulation, the resource would be depleted. And that's kind of what I was suggesting too. Like if the people understood that, no, I mean, we can take two big salmon for ourselves, and, have 20 a year or whatever it is, whatever that limit might be. And people were to understand that if we took more than that, then it would be unsustainable, and, to just consciously be that way would be awesome, but I just don't think people would, It would be somebody out there who would want 40 or 50 fish. The housing resource has been depleted by over harvest, I feel. I don't know. Is it? Like, is there a place in this world that you can build a house fairly cheap and live in it? It may not be your ideal condition because your ideal condition is also somebody else's ideal condition. And guess what? You're going to have to pay for ideal conditions. But, I think about it. Is a house impossible? Like, what if you were in some remote place up in Alaska or whatever, and you had the ability to build a cabin, which is essentially a house, not a great house, not the house you may want, but it's a cabin out in the woods. And for a lot of people, that would be paradise. And it may not even be that expensive to do. And so, like, the meaning you give behind it, like, are the resources to build a house completely depleted? Or is the ideal location for you no longer conducive? Boom! Simon finally got his vehicles taken. Benny, man, it is great to see you up in the live stream, brother. All right. I'm glad I didn't end it. All right. Gotta go now. Thanks for sharing the knowledge. Have a good day. Well, thank you, Tabitha. I really appreciate you joining in on this 2-hour long live stream. in my region, by the same logic, I could go to Alaska and find a remote stream with a lot of fish and insure. Right. And I mean, and that's like for a lot of people, that would be paradise, to just be up in a remote place up in Alaska, just fishing and, maybe, harvesting some deer or moose or whatever it is that's up there and, gardening during the season you can, and maybe coming up with some kind of product that you could figure out how to sell to, make a little bit of money for some staples or whatever. I mean, there's people out there who would probably really enjoy that sort of experience in their life. I might enjoy it for a summer, like that sounds like cool. I wouldn't mind roughing it like that and, living off the land and doing all that for a while. Man, sounds great. Like maybe even try for an entire year to see if you can make it through the winter and how tough you really are. Like that would be a great experience. I don't want to. I don't want to spend my like the rest of my years doing that. Like I like going to the baseball game. All right, my deep dive is property taxes. They raise taxes so they can spend 101 million for the homeless. The homeless are that way because they can't afford a home because taxes raise the cost. Bill, you're I mean, you're definitely not wrong on what it is that you're witnessing, but we also have to take into consideration that the Cantillon effect is at play here, and what you're really actually witnessing are the symptoms of it. Okay? I mean, all the regulations, all the money spent, all that other stuff. This is a sign of the inequality that is produced from the abundance of money that is moved into luxurious experiences, and that's the result of it. And why are you not in the car, sir? Thought I would do something different. I got this computer. It's not a new computer, but it's new to me, and it's huge. It's just massive. Like I can't even show you how big the screen is. It's just this huge, giant screen. And I thought, well, let's see what we can do. I got this mic here, mic check, and see if maybe we can make some quality videos from the desktop here. Are you feeling better, Luna? Now that Freddie took you for a walk? Thank you, Fredders. I appreciate you, man. She's going to do much better for that. All right. In favor of regulation to protect the wage earners from exploitation from the property owners and capitalists, over exploitation of housing is why it's so expensive and us wage earners suffer. How what does that regulation look like to protect the wage earner? Because for every action, you're going to have an equal and opposite reaction, and so you're pushing against an underlying economic force. What does that regulation look like, and then what happens when the regulation no longer is working? Does it take more regulation, more government intervention, more subsidies or something of this nature until the point that people are just so pissed off at it that they tell the government to get out of the way, and then boom, inequality comes firing back in? It looks like issuing fishing licenses, but for houses. So you need to get permission to own a home, or you need to be able to afford the license to get the home. I don't know. It sounds like they're too involved into my life, creating a situation in which I have no control over. I can't make the decisions on myself to figure out a position in which that I can build a house. Now I have to get licensed. I have to get a permission slip. I don't know, man. It sounds like gun regulations to me. It sounds like concealed weapons permit, right? I can't have a firearm unless I get a permit. I already have a right to carry a firearm. I'm not getting permission. If I ask for permission, do I have a right? I mean, by even asking for permission, did I relinquish my right? Because if I have a right, then I wouldn't have asked for permission. And that's what a license is. Can I buy a house? No. No, I don't have permission. Shit. Now what? In my area, no one wants to purchase the home that needs work. Really? God, everybody here wants to purchase the home that needs work. They just don't want to pay the price for it. They sit on the market until an investor comes in, fixes up, and then sells them. That's exactly what happens here. That's exactly what happens. Like the house itself is so expensive that you couldn't live in it, and like it's ridiculous. It would be ridiculous to live in it, and it's so expensive that only somebody who is planning on investing in making the property new again would have any consideration for it. Yeah. Well, it hasn't been regulated, and now the resource is gone for most. Yeah, but we have to understand, Justin, this is the underlying economic force. It's not their fault, and it's not to blame, and it's not something that you can control because it's the Cantillon effect. If we were producers and savers, we wouldn't be experiencing this. And all the regulations in the world doesn't make us producers and savers again. Right? All the creative financing in the world doesn't produce the real goods and services that we need here in this country. And the outcome of having an abundance of new money that comes into the system through debt issuance is a concentration of wealth. And there's really no better visual interpretation of the concentration of wealth than the property ownership out there. So I understand that the feeling of wanting to do something, right? And by attacking the symptoms of it with regulations, we are not addressing the underlying economic force. It's much like we're not addressing the underlying economic force that is creating the homelessness. Instead, we blame it on drugs. We blame it on all these other problems that, laziness or all these things that are essentially symptoms of the problem. And the problem is that if we do not have the ability to have a job that is productive and has the ability to save, then we are not going to have an easy time within this society in order to maintain an existence within ourselves that would be anywhere close to that of the American dream. We just can't share that experience with each other anymore because we're not producer savers. And all the regulations in the world and all the creative financing doesn't change that. Right? That's what I've been trying to share here on this channel. And I know it sucks. Like there might be an opportunity. And that's what I guess I should say. There may be an opportunity for you to take advantage of a regulation change or a shift or a rule aspect. And in that brief moment, you're the first one to jump in on the game. You will get the advantage of it, but it won't be sustainable and it won't be lasting. And those who got the advantage in the beginning, cool on you. But everybody else at the end of the line, they still suffer the consequences. So by your same logic, we should disband hunting and fishing licenses? I mean, yeah, in that logic, we should, but I just don't think people could actually behave themselves. Like if you had all the, if you have all the ability to go build all the houses you want right now, there's nobody stopping you. I mean, it might be, the position that we have. Like, I mean, there's nothing stopping me from going out and building a home right now, except for my understanding of how to acquire the network, how to acquire the financing, how to do all that other stuff. But there's all the opportunity in the world sits right there for us to take advantage of to build as many houses as we want. There's nothing stopping us, right? Just our own interpretation and our own mindset. So the path is there somewhere, right? Now, just because we can't see it doesn't mean that it's not there, right? Well, there you go. People need a bit of control or they ruin it for everyone.
I was going to say, there is one thing stopping you from just going out and building a house.
What's that?
Machinery, permits, land.
Well, that's what we're talking about is the regulations within like we're trying to compare that of housing to that of fishing. And so if you had a fishing license that gave you permission to fish, what they were saying is if you had a license that gave you permission to buy a house. Now, my question is behind this, like if you're a felon, you don't get a hunting license, right? Like you don't get to take advantage of all these things. So if you are a felon, at least now you can still own a house, right? You don't need permission to go buy a house if you're a felon. So here you have like different like social credit rulings, essentially, if like whether or not you get to participate in the government actions. And to then limit myself to a government permission is like, I don't know if that's necessarily something that I really want to do. I mean, fishing, I feel, is a human right. If you are looking to feed yourself, like you are going to die if you don't eat, right? Now, granted, there is systems in our society right now that will provide food for the people out there who are starving if you know how to go and get those things. But if at the end of the day, if you're starving and you catch a fish and you're eating that to survive, I cannot imagine that being punished, but it does. But I can't imagine that that's not something that somebody should be punished for. I mean, you're a human on this planet. You got to survive. And there's, we were, he like, we essentially are people who can harvest the land to live off of. And so to say, man, you can't do that to live. And, there's one thing to say, well, man, I have this full-time job full of bills and all this other stuff, but I still can't live, so I have to poach for food. Not the same thing, right? I mean,
It's even
what do you got a point?
yeah, it's kind of following yours. If you're lost in the woods in Oregon or any part of the US, you find a dead eagle, but it's still edible, you still get jail time.
If you ate the eagle?
Yeah.
Ooh. Well, I mean, I guess if you're going to survive, you remember that movie Fall? Have you guys seen that movie? Oh my gosh, these girls climb up this giant tower and one of them dies up there and the other one like grabs this buzzard or something that's going to go peck the eyes out of their friend and she kills it and eats it. Oh God, it was so nasty. Sustainability should not be punished. Yeah. Being anti-regulation is putting the power in unregulated tyrannical systems we have no say in. Yeah. I mean, again, like, I don't know what it is that you can, like, I don't know what it is that can fix it. Like, even the idea behind regulations and all the other stuff, I mean, it's all hypothetical, possibilities that has reactions, cause and effects to it that are unforeseen, that nobody really knows what it is that's going to take place until they are actually implemented. The one thing that I have found and that I have seen throughout the years of my studies is that it doesn't really matter what the government does. All the regulations, all the attempts, all the helps, all the ideas that they do, and you will still find massive separation between the rich and the poor, concentration of wealth, and the property ownership concentrating into the hands of the few. And it's been doing that for a very long time. I don't like the problems that we face is literally the conditions in which that we have an economy that is not productive in savings. If we were a productive saving economy, people would not be complaining about the housing situation. There would be plenty of houses for everybody to buy and have and, share with each other and build or whatever. But we're debtor consumers. And in that kind of economy, to try and say we can, create production out of thin air, it doesn't work like that. It just doesn't work like that. Well, fishing seems like a feasible regulatory model to apply to the housing situation. Is that right? Because fishing regulations seem to have screwed up everything as far as the fishing industries here in this state. Like, they never seem to get it right. Yeah, they're always like, they were banning gill netting. They were going to do all kinds of stuff because of the fishing conditions here. A lot of it had to do with the dams. Yeah. And so regulations isn't the only thing. There's a lot of industry that's involved with this that has created impacts on this wildlife that is more than just a regulation issue with the people with a fishing pole in their hand. Right? It's much deeper than that. What the not reason for the Fed, all the market panics and boom bust burst cycle, burst economics? What the not reason for the Fed? Basically you want to blame the Fed for all the booms and bust cycles. Well, that would, okay, So a lot of people might say, okay, the Federal Reserve is responsible for these booms and busts. Okay, I can kind of get that. There's a lot of arguments for that, but then that also would have to then go coincide with the fact that there was no booms and bust cycles prior to the Fed, and that didn't exist. There was definitely booms and bust cycles prior to the Federal Reserve. And so to blame the Federal Reserve for booms and bust cycles, that doesn't make sense because there was booms and bust cycles prior to the Fed. Now, granted, they were business cycles as opposed to debt cycles, and there is a difference inside of that once you raise and lowers the interest rates. But we also have to understand that we are in a condition in which that the Federal Reserve doesn't really move the interest rates that much anymore, but yet we have easing and tightening conditions that are happening within the economy. All right. But the Fed doesn't move. So is the Fed responsible for the booms and bust cycles during a time in which that they don't move, or only during times when they do move? Or are they responsible for the booms and bust cycles at all, since they occurred before the Fed? Right? See, that's why I don't blame the Fed for anything. It's more my understanding of the situation that has taken place. Now, I know right now, if you were to ask 99% of the people out there if the Federal Reserve is holding interest rates high to bring inflation down, I would assume that everybody would say yes, right? That's what they would say. Yes, that's what they're doing. They have elevated interest rates to bring the inflation down. I do not see it that way. I don't. Right? Is there truth in that statement? Sure. There's truth in the statement, but the reality of the situation is the Federal Reserve sits still. Inflation expectation has risen the neutral interest rate, and the real interest rate, not the nominal one, the Fed where the Fed funds rate is, but the real interest rate, the inflation rate or the neutral interest rate plus the inflationary scenario, has put the Fed very close to neutral. That's what I'm seeing, a neutral Federal Reserve, not one that's restricting the economy because of inflation. That's what 99% of the people see. 1% of the people here on the Uneducated Economist and the FOMC, see it much differently. They see it as something that is not restricting the economy because of the elevated inflation expectations that are essentially put the Fed funds rate at neutral. Very different story. All right. You should have the right to build a dwelling and have it fall on you and your family's head. I believe in that. Okay. Do you believe in that you should be able to buy a house that falls on your family's head because it was improperly built and not inspected properly and then covered up with sheetrock? So nobody was there to inspect the house when it was being built because, hell, those people let it fall on their head, but then they sold it to you and it fell on your head. Don't you think that maybe, just maybe, somebody should have taken a look at that house before it was covered with rock? Yeah. Just maybe. I mean, first earthquake and there's no seismic hold downs in that thing, and you have purchased a house that's made had 6 nails put into it, then yeah, you're probably going to end up paying the consequence and want to question somebody on that, right? I agree, deplorable about seatbelt laws being ridiculous. Yeah. I could understand that in the fact that, hey, it's my situation here. But here's the problem inside of that is that your injury that ends up costing the insurance company is so much money because you weren't wearing the seatbelt now drives the premiums up on everything. And so I could understand that if you say didn't get paid any hospital payout or weren't covered because you didn't have your seatbelt on, cool. Yeah, don't wear it, right? Because you don't get any coverage from the insurance company on it. But in order to keep the premiums down, because the medical expenses are so high for somebody who gets into an accident and doesn't wear a seatbelt, well, I guess everybody has to put the damn seatbelt on, and they have to make it a law in order for this to exist. Like, again, I'm not one to push back against the idea that we should be able to do whatever you want. I agree. If we had the manufacturer statement of origin to our vehicles, then the state wouldn't have any part in it. They wouldn't make us register it. They wouldn't make us insure it, and then we wouldn't have any of these issues. Right? But since they own part of the vehicle, essentially, because you don't own the manufacturer statement of origin, now you have to register it. Now you have to insure it, and you have to abide by their rules because you really don't own the vehicle. You think you do. You own kind of everything except for the ability to, not fall under their guide and their rules. It's a seatbelt, right? I don't like government regulations. But then again, once I understood what it is that they are regulating and how they were able to do it, started making a lot more sense to me. If we own that vehicle, straight up, the loyal, you own the manufacturer statement of origin. It's as if it's your skin. You get pulled over by a cop. He says, "Where's your license? Where's your insurance? Where's your registration?" And be like, "I don't have any of that stuff." He's like, "Well, the car's coming with me." And it was just like, I know it's not. This car is not registered with the state. They do not have the manufacturer statement of origin. I do. It's my property. It's as if it's my skin. And unless you are a judge, juror, or an executioner, this is not due process, and you're not going to take my property. That's how that works. But nobody owns it. Nobody has the manufacturer statement of origin. So now you can't call that out. You can't say that. All right? You have to abide by their rules, their laws, their regulations, all that other stuff. And if you don't like it, go get the manufacturer statement of origin, which is impossible. So, what are you going to do? You have to fall in line with their laws. I'm being anything for an easier life. If that liberal, I'll take it. I don't think a liberal mindset will ever bring in an easier life. In fact, in a lot of ways, it makes it harder. All right. You think about it. Where are the conservative places? And then think about the general conditions of that economy. Most of them are producer saver economies because they're conservative mindset, right? Produce, save. Now, if you are a consumer debtor, what is the general view of that? It's kind of a liberal mindset, right? Just, spend the money out there and take care of the people, whatever, right? Like all the attempts to deal with the homelessness here in Portland was just, I did videos saying, stop trying to help, right? Stop trying to help because you're not helping. You're actually making the problem worse. So the problem is new money injected into the system, and what they're going to do, inject a bunch of new money into the system. And it was just like, that's like, are you kidding me? Right? Do you think that's actually going to be like a condition in which that you can be a productive saver again? Of course not. It's going to make the problem worse. Right? Here, maybe we'll buy houses and then put homeless people in them. So productive people don't get to rent that house. That sounds like a plan. Then what happens to them? They have to pay even more for a more expensive house. Puts them even further down the line. It doesn't work out that well. But you go into conservative areas where you have production going on, and then now you got a condition in which that people are actually able to sustain themselves with a regular job. And so now we think, okay, well, we just need to be productive in every way, shape, and form in all these other areas. Doesn't work like that. Luxurious experiences doesn't look like a productive industrial nation. Like you go to those productive areas and what do you see? Smokestacks, rails, trucks, and it's just ugly as hell. Where do you go where the luxurious experiences are? Where the coast is, where you got the view, where you got the nice restaurants. What do you think it's going to look like as far as that kind of attitude there with that liberal mindset and that luxurious experience? How is it that the people are going to be able to conduct themselves there? It's going to be very difficult. All right? Even though all the luxurious experience is there, it's very hard. You go to an industrial area, not very pretty, not very luxurious, not so hard. To get better requires work. Not many want to do the work. That's for sure. Easy, not better. Do better. It needs to be improved on. It will continue to be easy. It makes it harder for everyone else and finally affects you. Right? I would have to say we would need lawyers for these sorts of things and clear laws regarding liability. But yes, you should be able to sell a piece of crap house under any condition. So you should be able to pay $400,000 for a house that was only worth $150,000 because it needed $300,000 in repairs. I mean, you're cool by that. That's like a cool thing with you, deplorable. I mean, not everybody can see what's going on the other side of that drywall. And that's I mean, I'm serious. Like, for some people out there, that might be bummer. That's the price we pay. And I mean, like, for other people, it would be like, bro, this is not right. There should be laws against this, right? And that's why they have building codes. Build this house at least up to a seismic code so it doesn't fall down on people. And again, like, I wouldn't have any problems not being regular. Like, hey, man, we're not going to, inspect your house or anything else. That would be just fine because I would still build it as, as how I know a house needs to be built. I mean, I would have shear paneling. I would have seismic hold downs. I would put in where I believe from the past experiences that I've had from building, put a building together that would stand the test of time and, the seismic activities that could happen. I don't, time will tell if that would work, but I've done it before. So, I mean, I could, reapply that to, future projects. Yui in the house, literally. Yeah. And we're like almost over 2.5 hours into the stream. It seems to me like Donald Trump is ready to allow Pakistan to have our real estate. If we took extreme responsibility for ourselves, we would only need to work for hours a day. I promise you. Oh, absolutely deplorable, man. There's nothing I could agree more with you on. I totally agree with that. All right. Has UE talked about the 21st Century Housing Act? No. Um, and again, until these things are actually initiated, I like, I mean, it's only what, like, hypothetical. It's only like, it's not reality yet. It could be. It's very real possibility, but he can't make any real decisions on it until it's been executed. Hey, UE, just building a deck while listening. Thank you. Just bought 2x12 8 treated boards for $32 a piece. How are the mills doing? Seems like the lumber is high. Lumber right now is a bit on the elevated side of things when you think about, 650 per thousand being essentially the same price that it topped out at prior to the COVID pandemic. It's around, I haven't checked it here in the last few hours, but it was around 620 earlier this morning. That is somewhat elevated. Mills are not doing well. There's no demand essentially taking place right now. It's all supply driven. And considering that's the case, there's not a lot of supply out there that's driving these prices up. So the moment that we do have any kind of demand pickup, it's going to get pretty, volatile and, in any sense of the word. Okay. And the bean counters teamed up on those honor bound countries and brought them to heel. Huh. I find to get into a house is like obviously like the biggest deal for a lot of people out there. And what I find like being in the position of like trying to buy this house and live in it, it's so hard. It's so hard to try and do it and make things happen. making the payments. Like there was a time in this country where it wasn't that big of a deal and it wasn't that hard. But I think, man, if it was just my wife and I and the day jobs that we had, it wouldn't work. Wouldn't happen. And as I share, a lot of the underlying economic forces and ideas and things like that are happening out there within the economy, people say, well, what do we do to fix this, to make it better? And I'm looking at it and I'm like, I don't know, man, because I can't imagine what it is that's going to happen that can then return me back to just working my day job that can then pay for all this, because I cannot see that taking place. I can't imagine a government intervention. I can't imagine anything that's happening that would be anything sustainable outside of people literally stop moving into luxurious experiences. That one thing. If the people just, like the general population, all the 10%, the 20%, they stop moving into luxurious experiences, things would start to fix itself in a way that people would want it to be fixed. The asset holders may not like it, but the wage earners would. Now, how do you expect your life to get better when somebody else has to deprive themselves of luxurious experiences? Do you want to, like, do we make regulations that do that? Like, here, you can't enjoy your money. Like somebody was telling me, I was just like, oh, dude, you've reached that threshold. Sorry. No vacation, no new car. You can't do any of that stuff because you've earned too much money. Like, is that a real thing? Is that something that can happen out there? Because would be the reversal, is the new money not moving into luxuries, but the new money moving into production. That's not the way it works. Even now, if we were to even think about it, we talked about it earlier today with the gold bond, that if the United States was to sell a gold bond and then, hey, we're going to earmark this gold bond money to go into production. Well, now you're still competing against the rest of the world out there because you didn't lower your standard of living. Now you're going to throw a bunch of money at production. That's going to be a malinvestment. It's not going to be able to be sustaining. That's going to go bankrupt, and you're still going to end up owing the money. The only way to make it work is austerity measures that then say, hey, man, you got to lower your standard of living. And now the austerity measures aren't for the rich. They're for the average everyday person, saying, hey, man, you don't get your Social Security, you don't get your Medicare, you don't get these entitlement programs. And then we can create a situation in which that you can be competitive against the rest of the world with your job. Meanwhile, the asset holders they're not going to give up. They're not going to be like, oh, well, sorry, we're not going to move into luxurious experiences. That's what they did it for, so they can be in a luxurious experience. So none of that stuff is going to happen like that. Yeah. I mean, it's just not. I don't like all that gold bond money going back into production is like the scariest thing I could think of they possibly do with it. It's a malinvestment. It'll be gone. It'll be spent. Somebody's going to make a bunch of money off of the money being spent, but it's not going to be productive to the United States. Those companies will go bankrupt, and then essentially the United States will be owing that money back to the bondholder, and that will come at the cost of the taxpayer, the wage earners, the working class. It's unfortunate, but that's just, it's how it goes. And I mean, all these people who come up with these ideas, as far as like, Judy Shelton and this whole gold-backed bond, their logic makes a lot of sense, but then they don't counter it. They don't have a counter argument for their own idea. And I'm thinking, if you do not have that counter argument, then I'm going to pop off with it, and you will have nothing that you can then push back against, right? Because, I mean, I can explain the situation that they are describing, like what it is that they are hoping and wishing for, but then also recognize how the underlying economic force is going to say, that ain't going to work. That ain't going to work like that. Think of all the abandoned houses in, say, Southeast Kansas and Detroit, and now think of all the homeless that have nothing. Guess what? They break in and squat anyway. All right. Back to this. The shoddy builders would be quickly pointed out and no one would buy from them. Absolutely incorrect, deplorable. Absolutely incorrect. The more demand for people to swing hammers, the more shoddy builders come out of the woodwork. That is absolutely incorrect. I know shoddy builders right now who are running somewhat like what appear to be successful businesses. And I know because I'm at the hub. People come in and go like, oh man, I've got to go back over this guy's work. And I always say it the same way, man, you don't have to tell me, but who is it that you're going back over? Whose work is it? Right. And then they tell me, and I'm like, I knew it. I knew they were hacks. Right. And so that's absolutely incorrect. I mean, I know it from firsthand view, maybe in the idea, that people say, oh no, man, you'll lose your reputation. You'll go out of business, not before the damage is done. And believe me, they can go for years and years before anybody realizes, man, that window has been leaking all the way down to the basement and rotted out 3 stories of house. Seen it, literally, it was a leaky. I want to say it was at the roof line, but now that when I remember, it must have been below the attic. There was like an attic window. They had like this attic space that you could walk around in, and it was storage or whatever, but there was a window up there and they didn't flash that window properly. And it was way up at this peak. And so I don't know, maybe they just didn't think they had to. Anyway, it leaked, and it leaked all the way down through like many floors, one down like the whole side of the house. And it wasn't noticed for a very long time. It wasn't until they could kind of see as they one year and they're looking at it, they could see discoloration in the siding, and they're like, what's going on there? And then that's when they realized it was rotting out, not just discolored, Wayne, I really dig the MK1 1.5 NA diesel motors they made. Gutless, but better than 65 miles per gallon. Yeah, right. Just keep right on running. All right. I wonder what the highly industry is 50s. What men could do with the tools, what we have now. Because they want to feed their ego, live in it for 5 or 10 years or more, same as a new car is traded in. The problem is our generation sees the scam, so it's hard to get motivated. Huh. Well, I don't know what you're talking about, but yeah, I used to be really focused in on New World Order kind of stuff and saw the scam within it, and then it deprived me from actually attempting to do anything. Farfanugan. The story of the gold machine, once you realize that they're just print this out of thin air, it kind of puts a damper on your industriousness. Really? Why? Once I realized that our government has a private corporation owned by the banks printing money out of thin air and picking winners and losers, I knew you could not work your way out of this. I disagree. I mean, lazy is easy. Yeah, it is. Deplorable. What would you consider getting out of this? Yeah. What would you consider getting out of this? Because it seems to me once you kind of figure out how it works, how it is that you position yourself, I mean, I may not be in the position in which that you want to be in. You might want to be way up here, and I want to be here, and that's whether you want to be there or not. I mean, it's just what you desire in life. Some people want to drive brand new trucks. I have very little desire to buy a brand new truck. Yeah. Don't get me wrong. I like driving a new car around or whatever. I drove my dad's, new vehicle up to Seattle. It was great. It was nice. It was like, man, look at all these features and really comfortable and awesome and braking and steering. And it's just really great. Okay, cool. After a couple hours, whatever, it's just another vehicle. And that's literally the way I feel about possessions. I am not big into material possessions. And that's just me personally. Other people love them. They love stuff. They love toys. They love having things, and to me, it's just like, things are all right. Things are cool for the moment, but I don't need a bunch of possessions in my life, especially if I have access to those stuff. Yeah, no, I don't need to own it. If I have access to it, that's good. That's good enough for me. And so for that, I don't need to acquire as much as a lot of other people do in their life. Now, there are some things that I would like to acquire. This house is being one of them. And considering the condition of life that I was in when I was able to actually afford to buy a house, I didn't have much like furniture and things for the house. Like house, things for a house is expensive. There's a lot of stuff that goes into a house. So again, when I think about what it is that other people have and what they need for their experience in their life, I think, man, they got a lot of stuff, right? I don't have that much stuff. And so I don't need that kind of experience in my life. And therefore I don't have to work for a lot of that kind of thing. What I do have to work for is so much different. Yeah. And again, that's just up to everybody. So what is making it? Like, I don't get it. Making it so that you have, brand new cars and vacations and awesomeness, or is it making it so that you don't have to work very hard to sustain an existence that meets your approval? Like, I don't think that's that hard. To make it really awesome might be a little harder, but to make it good, it's not bad. It's good. Like, what are they doing to stop me from that? Nothing. There's nothing that it can do to stop me. It's my efforts, it's my time, my energy, my expectations, my meaning. They don't have anything to do with any of that. Making it is about $30 an hour or more now. Nope, not in Astoria. $30 an hour would not make it. Maybe make it is like having an apartment, but that's about it. Like, you might be able to afford an apartment and food, and that's making it cool, but that's that's all you're going to ever have from it. If you want anything more in your life, you're going to have to earn extra, all the money beyond the money you're already making, because $30 an hour ain't going to do it. Yeah. Maybe in some areas, it's not in Astoria. Simon, I remember when you shared that you were buying the house and it appeared you guys were out of your mind getting it done, but then over time, really glad you did it. I lost my nugget trying to buy this house. Like, it was very stressing, very overwhelming. And yeah, it's funny about buying property is that I was talking to lumberjack landlord about this, and I said, dude, I can't believe how stressful it was. And he goes, listen, man, when I bought my first property, exact same thing, man. I thought for sure that this is going to be horrible. We're going to lose. We're going to all this other stuff. Like, he kind of talked about everything that I had talked about. And he says, and you guess what, man? When I went to buy my 42nd property, I went through that exact same experience. This is the one that's going to sink us. This is the one that's going to fail. This is, and this is horrible. This is a bad idea. Don't do it. He said all those things ran through his head from the first property all the way to the 42nd property. He said, after that, it got a little easier, right? It's stressful. Nobody thinks they're making the right decision. Everybody thinks that they're doing it wrong. I tell you what, this is how stressed I was buying this house. When I got the phone call that said, you're approved, everything's cool, you're going to buy this house. Like, things are going to close next week. Everything's happening. It's secured. Right? I hung up the phone. I took a deep breath. And I said, we got it, guys. And everybody just kind of looked at me. And then I walked downstairs and I sat down there by myself for a while. There was no cheers. There was no yeah, we got it. Woo, can't wait. And there was none of that. It was more like this okay, here we go. We're going to do this. All right. That's the way it felt. I wanted it to be exciting. I wanted like parties and streamers and everything, like all this other stuff going on. Like, yeah, we got it, bro. Whatever. It didn't look anything like that. It was like a big sigh, and not a sigh of relief, but more like, okay, this is really going to happen. And that's really the way it went. Yep. Oh my God, here we go. Yeah, that's the way it felt. All right. The wallet in my pocket right now, I bought it at Berman Buckskin when I was in the 5th grade. Holy moly. Like, man, that's impressive, Wade. I don't think I have anything from the 5th grade, let alone a wallet. Oh, all righty, guys. How long are we going to do this for? How long have we been doing this for? God, it's 12:05 already. My goodness. I was going to work in my yard today. So I'm going to have to start cutting these videos to make them shorter. I don't know, because nobody's going to be clicking on a 3-hour video. Wayne, that sounds like a great wallet, doesn't it? I mean, how do you get those wallets? Let me see, is it sitting up here? Hold on, let me see if I have it. Haha, I do. Oh, I should give this all-nighter. Anyway, I bought a few of these, and I carried one of these around for a long time. But as cool as they are, they're kind of cheaply made. Oops. All right. From the Pulp Fiction, it even has like Jules' ID. Yeah. What does that say on there? Make everyone know that you're one of the bad MFers by your choice of wallet. I love it. I love carrying that wallet around. I'm gonna give that to all-nighter when he comes up here next month. So sorry, I gave your birthday present away. Yeah. You never open it, Wayne. 42 people watching, 70 likes. Yeah.
Almost 3 hours.
Almost 3 hours. Yeah. I'm gonna have to do something different. 3-hour live streams are not conducive to algorithms spreading. People just don't like clicking on 3-hour videos. Great wallet. Hold up well when you don't have to open them. Yeah. I think we should call it quits. Do you have the day off? Yeah, I have the whole week off. And so I was going to work on the lawn today, but I got stopped by a live stream. All right. Do 2 types of content. Do short videos and lives. Yeah. Well, now that I have this desktop going, I think I can edit the videos to just cut out the very beginning of it, where the information is, the first 10, 15, 20 minutes of it or whatever, and then, make the rest of it, I don't know, members only or something like that. So that the information gets out there and it would be more reasonable for somebody to click on a 30-minute video as opposed to a 3-hour one. Pull some pieces out of the long videos. Is there a way to have AI do it? Yeah, there is. Actually, there's a can't remember the name of it right now, but there's a video editor that's really good that I was using for a while to cut shorts from. And I could probably do that. Even YouTube now has like, they make it really easy to cut shorts and actually make, highlights to the videos and stuff like that. So it's pretty easy to do it. The only part that I find difficult is like the videos that I have typically done have an intro and an outro to them. And not having that part of it is just kind of feels like it's just cut out of a bigger video and doesn't really have like an actual personal, like personally created or a dedicated created video. It's just more of like just taking that segment out, which is fine, don't get me wrong, but I think it's a better video if it's like, meant to be.
Meant to be clicked on and watched all the way.
Or just meant to be created in that sense as opposed to sectioned out. What's the weather like in Astoria today? Down in Bend and dying for some Moe's chowder. Today is really nice weather, clear skies, no problems. Everyone needs to click a thumb in the share. Yeah, it's really up to you guys when it comes to the algorithm and the spreading of the algorithm. Watching the videos, sharing the videos, commenting on the videos, all the engagements. That's really what the algorithm is looking for. Click-through ratios. That's really it. When somebody sees the thumbnail or sees the title and actually clicks on that when it's suggested to them, that's really where the algorithm loves it. And I think a lot of times because of the length of the video, that really just kind of just discourages them from even like wanting to check it out for the first 10 or 15 minutes. Not exactly a short. No one wants to see your shorts. Just like a 15, 20-minute video. Yeah, no, I agree. And that's something I'm going to work on. I might even show Freddie how to like find those particular sections, and maybe he can like team up and start making this like a family operation here. I mean, he's pretty good at doing the tech stuff, so if he could kind of figure out where it is inside of those videos where it would be like the most helpful, useful information, or even your guys' suggestions like, hey, that clip between here and here, that was awesome. I'd love to see that as a short. That would help me out, because a lot of times just going back and reviewing like something that I've already seen. I mean, I've said it a million times and I don't think of it being like, hey, that's unique, awesome information that I would like to have separated. Not always do I think of stuff like that. So if you guys come up with that idea, like, hey, take this section out and make that work, I'd totally do it. Are you posting on the Facebook? Not really. I mean, I post some stuff on my personal Facebook page, but not a whole lot on the Uneducated Economist, just simply because I don't have enough time. I mean, I guess I do if I think about 3 hours. But trying to be active on, like, say, YouTube, be active on Twitter, be active on, some of the other places out there, and be consistent on it is very difficult. Like, I just gave up on Instagram. I just couldn't keep up on it. Even though I was getting a lot of attention and it was really working over there, I just found it to be like too consuming, and I couldn't like focus in on some of the other things that I wanted to do. So I just basically made it, YouTube as my main focus, and then, occasionally pop in on the other ones. I tried to do a little bit more stuff on X, but even there, people are like, dude, did you give up? And I'm like, no, it's just trying to be consistent all the time with all this stuff. It's just like, man, without a team, got Freddie in the background. Freddie can be social media guy. Absolutely, he could. I saw hundreds of videos to buy SpaceX, but no videos to not buy SpaceX. Oh, you didn't see me make a video to buy SpaceX.
Yeah, because Elon Musk, Tesla, and SpaceX stock dropped, so he's not a trillionaire anymore. But
all right, no longer the trillionaire. Hey, Mama, is there any coffee left over there?
Nope.
Oh, okay. That was a quick answer. Coffee. Yeah.
I make a pot.
No, I don't need any more coffee. I was just hoping there would be a little bit left. I think it's a pump and dump. What, the SpaceX? Oh, yeah, I guarantee it. That's why, like, anything that has a lot of attention to it, I just back right out. I mean, even the video I did after silver made that major run, it runs up to $80+ an ounce, and I made a video buying silver at 80, and I told people be very cautious, at this level. And there was so much pushback. You should go and read the comments on that. And I had so many people going, dude, you're gonna wish you had eaten your words on this. You're gonna see silver at $180 an ounce, and on and on and on and on. And I'm like, yeah, okay, I'm not pushing it back at the possibility. Like, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised to see silver someday at $1,000 an ounce. The only problem is that I don't see that happening tomorrow, and I didn't see where $80 was going to be the place of floor for silver. I'm thinking I didn't have an actual number, but I didn't think 80 was it. And now here it is, been consistently under 80 for quite some time. I'm glad I made that video. I really am. And I never doubted it from the very get-go. As much as people wanted to push back against it in the comments section, we each have to make our own decision and give it our own meaning. I like Owen Benjamin's take on SpaceX and space-related topics. Oh, what was his idea? I missed it. Good old SpaceX. We made so many parts for them when they first started. Do you still find people trying to get directions to the Goonies house these days? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. It's a very popular location, and you can see it from, you can see it from the main drag going through Astoria. You can see it up there on the hill. Last year, a bunch of movie set creators had come down and reconditioned the house to make it look exactly like the movie again. For the Goonies anniversary and all that. It's not the tourist attraction, an event that you go to take tours of and stuff like that. That's not exactly, well, I mean, maybe they have times like that, but the neighborhood actually has people living in the neighborhood. So you can walk up to the house, but you can't really drive up there, and it's not really made for tons of people to be up there.
You can see the car and stuff at the film museum.
Yeah, and there's parts of stuff there around the film museum.
Bullet holes in it.
Sellers flooded the market with silver. They actually quit buying junk silver. Yeah. And see, now that's a problem. You think about it, how many people out there had put themselves in a position in which they said, man, as soon as the silver gets up to this price, I'm dumping it all out there. And then the moment they go to dump it, they realize, man, they are holding the wrong type of silver. All of a sudden, all the dealers are like, hey, we're not buying junk silver. We're not buying anything that isn't being sold to the other customers, because the refiners aren't picking that stuff up from us. So we're not buying it either. And now that's a major problem, right? Here it is. It's hundreds of dollars, $100 an ounce, and you're hoping to unload your silver, and you can't find anybody to buy it because there's nobody who's buying that type of silver up in the industrial level. That's a problem. And so to be positioned in a way that says, yeah, I can unload this silver because I know exactly what I have. I got junk silver, I got silver eagles, I got, silverware, I got, these things that have different value to it. A silver dollar, right? Do you find people trying to, that was awesome. Thanks. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, Astoria is a really unique area. There was a lot of movies filmed in Astoria. I mean, it was like Kindergarten Cop, Short Circuit, The Goonies, Come See the Paradise, Cthulhu 2, Ring 2. Man, it just goes on. There's a ton of movies that were made here. And I'm guessing it's probably because of how old the city is, you can make it look like Come See the Paradise. I think it was supposed to be New York. So, with the older like, construction and stuff like that around here. It made it easier for them to make that movie here. My dad was in that movie, Come See the Paradise.
Yeah. From 1937 to more, Roaring Timber, The Black Stallion, The Goonies, Short Circuit, Benji the Hunted, Kindergarten Cop, Come See the Paradise,
Free Willy.
Free Willy, Somewhere Else, Shooting Nick, The Ring 2, The Guardian, Into the Wild, Wendy and Lucy, Everyman's War, Crimps, Green Room, Worth, Dead by Midnight, and more. Yeah.
All right. It just goes on. You can't really see it there. Yeah. Rambo First Blood is based in Oregon somewhere. Yeah, and you can kind of tell by, when like the scenery in that movie, it's obviously the Pacific Northwest. It's funny. I can pick out the Pacific Northwest inside of, I mean, you can just kind of tell just by the plants and stuff like that, but you can stay in the Short Circuit house. Yeah, he actually made that a bed and breakfast. Yeah, I met the guy who owns that. He's a pretty cool dude too. He's kind of, I don't know. I think he said he worked on the train, like the rails or something like that, and then bought that Short Circuit house with the intention of making it into an Airbnb with that theme. Any new movies being made? They were saying Austin is going to be the next Hollywood, yet nothing really being made. I don't know of any current productions that are happening inside of Astoria or any future ones that are being planned. So I'm going to do a small production. Actually, I have to do a scene for the theater next month. Frankie and Johnny and the Claire de Lune. Just a very quick scene. But it's pretty cool. I couldn't believe it. We had practice. I'd done it in a class. I had taken an acting class a few months back and did the scene, learned the lines, and then the director and the lady who was teaching the class asked if we would do that scene again for like kind of like a commercial kind of thing for the theater, to present like different scenes for other people who might be interested in coming in and taking the classes or getting into the theater or something, and then present like these different scenes that had been practiced inside of the classes. And so I was like, yeah, absolutely. The chance to get up on stage and, do another scene, for sure, man. I'd totally be down for it. So I lost my script. I couldn't find the script anywhere. And so I finally found it online and I downloaded, I took screenshots of it, downloaded it, gave it to Sarah and says, here, help me practice these lines. Let me know when I screw up. And I couldn't believe it. I remembered all my lines, like every line in that scene. I got it. I nailed it. And I was like, holy crap, man, that is so awesome. I mean, it's been months since I did it and I still remembered every bit of it. So I'm looking forward to doing that scene again. It was a lot of fun. Debbie does Oregon. I doubt Debbie is still around. Yeah, I can't imagine what Debbie would be like today. All right, 3 hours, 8 minutes. Are we going to go for a 4-hour live stream, or are we calling it quits now? I can't believe how many people have joined in. We got 38 people, 74 likes. You sound like Debbie Downer. Wow, great chit chat. Yeah, it is. Fun just hanging out, right? See, it's like this kind of vibe on the webinar, only like 10 times better, right? Ask Justin. Justin's there for him. Yeah, not sure what else I can add to it. Chat's gone quiet. All right. You get what you pay for with the webinar. Yeah. Well, what I think is awesome. I should make an AI girlfriend and start an OnlyFans page. Yeah, go for it, man. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who would be willing to pay AI girlfriend, for images or something. I don't know, man. But yeah, like as far as that webinar goes, I do agree with that, Justin. You get what you pay for. And, really what I kind of almost have a feeling is going to end up taking place with these webinars is we're going to get somebody new who comes in and it's going to be like almost like a group consultation. Like, hey, come on into the webinar, share your story, share your experience, share your understanding of the credible threat theory, and then maybe ask questions and get all these different perspectives and views from it, right? Not just mine, because like, here you can ask a question, maybe, get some comments back, but in the webinar, you can actually get my opinion and then literally the other person speaking, you can have a conversation with them and then directly converse while we sit there and listen. It's incredible. Like oh, thank you. Oh, is that from the server?
Yeah.
Is that one of our key cards?
Yeah.
That's the missing one. We say, if you ever happen to go to T-Mobile Park, Silver Cloud Hotel, and it's awesome. It's right across from T-Mobile Park. And there's a pool up on the roof. They got an excellent restaurant, and it makes it so convenient to go from your seat at the park to in your hotel room, using your own bathroom. It's just like, it is so nice, man. We've done it, quite a few years in a row now. It's a little 4. Is it 4 years? You keep saying.
Yeah, that was our third Red Sox game. And then one Oakland game.
It was our third Red Sox? I thought that was only yours. Okay, you remember, man. You remember. So, yeah, our fourth time doing it.
Yeah. Wait. Yeah. Now I've got 2 baseballs.
Yeah, we've gotten 2 baseballs now. Go grab those baseballs. Let's show them off.
Okay.
All right. You want me to be done, Mama?
How long has it been?
I don't know, 3 hours and 12 minutes. Yeah, I've been going at it for a while. All right, we'll show off the baseballs, then we'll call it good.
I got them.
Hey, UE, greetings from Southern California. There.
So, this from it. Got Moose. I'll hold this. We got Moose, which was in ballpoint pen, so it's kind of fading. Taylor Saucedo, and then Brandon Bernardino. And
then
this one was the first game.
that one was from Trevor Story.
Yeah. You can
And that was
a
from
bat mark on it.
Yeah, it was a game played ball, and at the end he tossed that right to us.
And then the other one, there's a lot of.
And this was a game played ball too, but it was the Mariners who were in the field, and for whatever reason, I can't remember why, but the third base coach for the Red Sox, so basically he's guiding the runners around. They shouldn't even have the ball. He ends up with the ball. And I can't remember exactly why. And
I thought the Red Sox were in the field.
No, I'm pretty sure he was standing there at the base.
He was.
Right. And so
the Mariners were on the field.
The Mariners were on the field. That's right. And he was standing.
So the Red Sox were hitting.
That's right. And so the third base coach was standing there at the third base, the box, the coach's box.
Yeah.
And so typically during that time, the final out or the last ball, the Mariners would take the ball and toss it over onto their side because they were in the field. But for whatever reason, Epperson ended up with it.
It's because the Red Sox were hitting, so they threw it over to the Red Sox. If the Mariners hit, they throw it over to the Mariners.
No.
Okay.
Well, how did Trevor Story end up with the ball?
It was the last out.
And the Red Sox were in the field.
Yeah.
And he had right, and then this time the Mariners were in the field, and the coach came up with it, and that's why I'm saying it was just like I don't even know why Epperson even had the ball. He shouldn't even had it. It should have been the Mariners tossing it over to their side. How they've been doing it the rest of the game, like I mean, I don't think there's any rule to it or anything like that, but he had it, and he was like, aha, and he tossed it right towards us.
It's because the ball was hit to the second baseman, and they all threw it around, but it ended up back over by the second baseman, so we tossed it to the coach.
Right. So like it ended up on the ground for whatever reason, and I can't remember exactly why. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Epperson ended up with it, and he tossed it towards us.
I don't care. I got the ball.
And yeah, and sure enough, it landed right in my hands. I couldn't believe it. I mean, the couple sitting next to me, if they had reached out a little bit further, like especially because it was like the guy sitting next to me and then his wife, and if his wife had just reached out like a little further, she would have caught it, right? But she was kind of like, like, oh my gosh, it's coming to me. And then he was kind of doing the same thing. And as I'm watching it come, I just kind of reached out there a little ways, and it was kind of in front of him, not really, but and the ball's flying everywhere. And it's like whoever can get their hands on it first. And sure enough, man, I just basically took it right out of the air and then handed it to my dad, who handed it to my brother, who handed it to Freddie. It was perfect.
Yep. And we got a souvenir.
And we got a key.
We accidentally took the key card.
Let's see what we got. The webinar has some good conversations for sure. Absolutely. Like even last night, it was Susan and Tom, and I think Susan was a little bit nervous about her and being like essentially the only one. So she was like, no, we got to get more people up in here. And so I'm trying to send out links to get more people in, emailing them out, and it just didn't work. It ended up being the three of us, and it was a great conversation. I mean, I loved it. We had a great time sitting there talking for, I don't know, probably a good hour or so. And yeah, and then after I clicked out of the webinar, I realized that there was 2 links up, and Justin, I think it was Justin and somebody else was having their own conversation in their own webinar, from the school community. So it was pretty cool that it didn't go to a total waste. Like even though I had screwed that up with the, technical difficulties that I was facing on it, but still, I mean, I think it was a fairly successful evening, in my opinion on that. And then people share how and what they see in the world, how it's underpinned by the Cantillon theory and understanding the Fed's actions. Absolutely. David and Justin had basically their own private conversation in their own webinar, which I thought I'm like, oh man, look at this was all going on. I didn't even know it. I'll still try to make the school videos. Okay. The school webinar is not recorded. So that is something that you have to be there for, or hear the stories about it later. But we don't record the school webinar. That one's just, it's only for those who are there. Simon, how does the Cantillon effect work with the decentralized money? I don't think there's good. Well, the Cantillon effect still plays out, right? Whether the money is decentralized or not. And so to understand, like, the Cantillon effect was playing out prior to the establishment of the Federal Reserve, and it continues on today. And even the removal of the Federal Reserve System doesn't stop the Cantillon effect from playing out. And to understand what that is really happening, it's the new money. Now, regardless if it's from a mine, like mining operations, like actually mining gold and silver, if that operation comes from production, like you're selling your goods and services, if it coming from war effort, like you're just literally stealing it from other people, or if you're producing it out of thin air by debt issuance, the results are the same, right? It might look a little different on the behavior of the people and how it is that they acquire the money, but essentially the result is the same, in that the new money, the people who have first access to it will spend it at face value on luxurious experiences that then separates the rich from the poor. That doesn't change. It doesn't matter if it's decentralized, centralized, gold, silver, fiat, clamshells, it doesn't really matter, right? The same thing happens. The people who have first access to it will spend it at face value on luxurious experiences that will separate the rich from the poor. Right? It may not always go down that way, like every single moment of every single minute of every single economic time. But for generally speaking, that's what you would end up experiencing from new money coming into the system, is the separation between the rich and the poor. And whether that's centralized or decentralized really doesn't make any difference. Hearing the stories makes sad. Hearing the stories makes sad. Huh. Well, a decentralized fixed money like Bitcoin makes a big difference. You're right, but we were talking about how the Cantillon effect plays out. And what you're going to end up finding is that here in the United States, that if you had a decentralized, like immediately, boom, go right to Bitcoin and you remove cash from the system, that wouldn't happen. But if you attempted to do that, you would have a complete crash of the United States, as we do not produce the things that we need here. So you would suffer the consequences of not having any production and then exporting all your Bitcoin for the goods and services that you would like here. And then you would be broken, misery, and pain. So that's the Cantillon effect playing out if you were to do an instantaneous, like, removal of cash and introduction of Bitcoin, which just wouldn't happen. So even the gradual introduction of Bitcoin or gold or silver into the economy wouldn't work either because of Gresham's law, the hoarding of the good currency and deployment of the bad currency into the system. So Gresham's law and the Cantillon effect would definitely prevent a decentralized currency from being introduced overnight or even gradually introduced. Neither one of those things would happen. We do have exports, not enough. We have plenty of resources. The government would adapt and drop regulations. Absolutely incorrect. We do not have enough resources to maintain our elevated standard of living. We would crash in pain and misery. That is absolutely incorrect. We import far more than we export. Right? Far more. And Triffin's dilemma is another reason why we do that, is because we have to maintain the dollar dominance, and by providing the world with liquidity through trade deficits. So Triffin's dilemma, Gresham's law, Cantillon effect, they all play out there. Right? There's no bringing in a good currency. That is not a real thing. If we were a productive nation, productive saving nation, I'd be like, woohoo, all about it, man. Sign me up. Bitcoin and gold all the way. But we are not. We are far from it. And we are not going to just all of a sudden just turn around and be a productive nation tomorrow or even next decade. Our standard of living would have to drop dramatically in order to be competitive against the rest of the world out there who is willing to produce the same things that we are. There's no fixing that. That is, I mean, you can come up with the creative artistic fantasies and, ideas of how that would, like, actually end up like being a real thing within our economy, but you would have to ignore Gresham's law, Cantillon effect, and Triffin's dilemma. And when you do that, you're going to face the consequences of them. Bitcoin and gold are crashing. What does this mean? Are they really crashing? I mean, or are they coming back down to a reasonable price? Bitcoin, you can't really. Bitcoin is too volatile to give it any kind of consideration for anything other than being an incredibly volatile asset. Gold has a lot more stability to it. And so if you're kind of looking at gold as far as like, an indicator of what it is that's going on out there, most people look at gold as a safe haven, saying, man, I am in terrible fear of the government, terrible fear of the banking system, terrible fear of all these things that are happening out there. And I want to position myself in a way that is like, outside of that kind of condition. That's when you generally see gold doing quite well. Now, when things start to ease, the stress of war, stress of banking, finance collapse, and all that stuff starts to fade away, what's the point of holding gold? All right. It doesn't pay you anything. So it'd be better to have something that at least pays you an interest or a dividend or something. And so this is really where, like, you know, the gold finds its mark. Like, everybody wants to blame inflation for the gold price. And in a lot of ways, okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But then we have to look at it from many different angles. And part of that is the investor's point of view, whether or not they want to get into gold for the safe haven or whether or not they want to get a dividend yield or an interest payment. In that sense, they're willing to take on the risk because of the economic conditions out there are favorable to that risk. When they're not favorable, then they get scared and they run to gold. All right, guys, I'm going to give it 5 more minutes here and then we're going to call it good. That's incorrect. We only import 15% of the food supply in the U.S. and the net producers of oil. I don't know where it is that you are looking at, but you can just go ahead and just look at, like, debtclock.org and look at the trade deficits that are taking place right there. The fact that there is a trade deficit occurring, just look at that. Okay. That means we're importing more than we're exporting. The moment that shifts, we stop exporting dollars. When that happens, the dollar strengthens dramatically and it will destroy the few exports that we do have. You got to understand Triffin's dilemma. You can't push back against it until you have understood, internalized Triffin's dilemma, and then formed an argument that says it's going to counter Triffin's dilemma. If you can't do that, then Triffin's dilemma is always going to be pushing back against you, right? And in your theory. And you can't ignore it. You can't just say, "Oh, Triffin's dilemma. Nah, never mind that stuff. I'm not gonna deal with that." Then you suffer the consequences. Very much like right here. I mean, you got to understand, if we don't import the stuff and export the dollars, the demand for dollars increases. The value of the dollar comparatively to the basket of world currencies then means that the rest of the world will stop buying your exports. Whatever production that you do have that you are exporting will become far too expensive. And this is Triffin's dilemma, is to being able to provide the world with the liquidity that they demand so that it keeps the dollar from strengthening too much. There will come a point in this future in which that I believe the Federal Reserve will not be able to print at a pace that is fast enough to meet the demand for the dollars. Literally, the Federal Reserve will not be able to print at a pace that is fast enough in order to meet the demand for all the dollars of dollar-dominated debt that exist out there when it comes due. And the Federal Reserve already knows that the United States is on an unsustainable debt path and that they cannot continue to buy the U.S. Treasuries. This is one of the reasons why I bring up that Ben Bernanke speech from 20 plus years ago, where he literally stated it right in the speech that the Federal Reserve already has the authority to buy the debt of a foreign nation. This gives them a huge scope of operations, much bigger than that of the U.S. Treasuries. So when the demand for dollars starts to exist because of the world global debt issuance in dollars, it didn't have anything to do with the United States, but yet the United States better come up with the liquidity to provide to the people to pay those debts somehow, some way, and get it out of the country. And that's not going to be easy in itself without running trade deficits. Then the dollar is going to then increase in value in such a way that it will destroy the manufacturing base here in the United States. The only way to fix it is by austerity. You have to have a lesser standard of living. That is it. No new luxurious experiences, and a dramatic reduction in the standard of living. Outside of that, I don't know what would work. Nothing will work. Anybody who comes up with any other suggestions will be ignoring Gresham's law, Cantillon effect, and Triffin's dilemma. And if they ignore those 3 underlying economic forces, they will pay the consequences for it. Zero doubt in my mind. Much like the idea, even Andy Scheckman in that video that Deja had sent me earlier in that interview, I mean, he even said it. We can sell these gold bonds and then use the money to move into production. And I'm thinking, that's a malinvestment. That's going to fail. You can't do that. You have to reduce the standard of living in order to be a competitive producer. And without reducing the standard of living, there ain't nothing going to happen. You can position yourself individually, all right, but you can't save this economy with some creative financing like that. It ain't going to work. Importing cheap Chinese plastic, furniture, and toys doesn't pose a threat to the U.S. You're wrong. It does. Yeah. And the threat is that of denying our own production capabilities, because just even the idea of cheap Chinese crap coming into the United States, the cheap Chinese furniture means you're not buying high quality furniture from the United States. You bought cheap Chinese furniture. That's exactly Cantillon effect playing out right there. Right? Your domestic manufacturers of good high quality furniture goes out of business because of cheap Chinese plastic that comes in. That's the Cantillon effect playing out. It is absolutely damaging the United States. But you have to understand that's part of it. That's the way the economic cycles work. That's the Cantillon effect. All right. No one is going to vote for austerity. Hold gold. You're absolutely right. The one thing that would actually fix it is for people to go through austerity and for the rich elitists to stop buying luxuries. Like that's their austerity. All right. We get to suffer with less food, less medical, less housing, less all that other stuff. The rich, they just don't get to take the fancy vacations or buy newer cars. Like that's their austerity. And if we went through something like that for a generation, then let's bring it on back, man. Let's make it happen. But nobody's going to vote for it. Nobody's going to do it. All right. 3.5 hours was a very long time. Thank you so much for hanging out through this entire one. We got 32 people still watching, 77 likes. I can't believe that, we went this long. Still going. Nice. We moved the boat trying to get closer to the dock. We got one boat closer. Oh, okay. So All Nighter wasn't here. Hey, man, I showed off your birthday present, but don't look for it. All right. The asset holders aren't buying the cheap products. They prefer high quality. Doesn't matter where it comes from. Absolutely incorrect. 10% of the nation is doing 50% of the consumption. 20% of this nation is doing 70+% of the consumption. That leaves 80% of us to do the remaining 30% of the consumption. We are literally insignificant in this. We are not the consumers, right? We are not the consumers. We aren't even considered the consumer by the Federal Reserve or anybody else. We are out the game, right? Average everyday wage earners, not important, not the consumer, not the one who is being focused in on. Top 10, 20%, they're the consumer. All right. Rich people buy the cheapest crap. Ask me how I know. All right. You guys are awesome. Thank you for being here. But I'm going to call it quits. You guys are so rad for being here this entire time. How do I end the stream? I forget. Do I just close it? Oh, there it is. End stream. There it is. Oh, I can just insert ads. Can I just insert an ad right there? Oh, right on. Okay. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much for being here. Uneducated Economist. You guys let me know.